Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon, yeah, welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Thank you to Alex. She's back very soon right here on Talk. Lots coming up. The Trump-supporting pensioner who says she was left feeling like an utter criminal after UK police showed up at her door over a, you've guessed it, a Facebook comment. The police officer told Deborah Anderson to apologise or face a former interview for an allegedly threatening post. Really? They also wouldn't tell her what it was. More on that story and on the issue of free speech. Donald Trump yesterday urged Keir Starmer, you heard it live here on this programme, to do whatever it takes to halt those small boat crossings, even deploying the military. The former US president called on the Prime Minister to adopt his hardline approach used at the US-Mexican border. At the time when this was all being said by Trump, Keir Starmer looked like a man that had just been dragged into a head teacher's office and given 7,000 hours of detention and 100 billion lines. It wasn't a good look. And Trump's rejected Starmer's plans to recognise a Palestine state. Yesterday, Trump said it was one of the few disagreements with the Prime Minister. More on that as well, and of course, everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. I can only ask this in one very straightforward way. Does the UK still have free speech? Now, yes, it does. Of course it does. I wouldn't be sitting here now being able to opine on a whole variety of issues, from who runs our country, who runs our world, our institutions, the foibles, the curious nature of this often upside-down world. I'm free to do that. You're free to call in and respond to it. And, of course, if you wanted to stand in the street with a placard protesting against X, Y and Z, as long as there's no profanities or incitement to violence or anything else, you're free to do that as well. However, and I've said this quite a lot lately, free speech, like democracy, it's kind of all intertwined as being the same thing, isn't a solid, immovable thing. It doesn't just, you don't establish it and it just remains there for the rest of time. It's kind of often tested. There are scenarios that come into play that mean that once in a while you have to go back and just check that this very special piece of verbal kryptonite is still intact and it can still be utilised and used and respected as it always has been. So we shouldn't be surprised that once in a while there are challenges or bumps in the road when it comes to free speech and freedom of speech. It does seem to be that this entire... I'm tempted to say, maybe you'll put me right on this, I'm tempted to say that this entire argument, pretty much this entire argument, is really about social media, isn't it? It's about what can be said on social media. That's ultimately what I think most of these stories are about and where most of these stories come from, whether it's somebody going to jail because of something they said on social media, whether it's a couple getting a visit from the police because they had a row on, well, it was WhatsApp actually, but it's kind of same thing, the digital world, or whether it is a woman who'd apparently posted something about well, potentially a Republican post something about someone who had a very opposite view, one would assume, something like that. I'm going to play you a little bit of the moment the cop turned up at this lady's house. But first, let's have a reminder. Our own Prime Minister, he's having none of it. He says, yeah, I've got loads of free speech. I mean, it's all over the place, says Mr Starmer. Here's what he said at that press conference yesterday.
I'm all for free speech. I'm also for protecting children from things that will harm them, paedophiles, those that peddle suicide, which had a terrible consequence for individual, particularly teenagers. And so that's the balance we strike. But we have had freedom of speech in this country for a very long time, and we will always protect it.
Now, there is Starmer spectacularly missing the point of the question. He's talking about the online safety bill there. I mean, it's connected, obviously. That's a different thing. The spirit of the question, I'm all for free speech. What a nice man. Our Prime Minister supports free speech. He kind of said it as if it was, maybe a little controversial. He must have known what was implied in the question about free speech. This is about whether you can post stuff online. If somebody is offended by something, who cares? I mean, seriously, who cares? As we always say, nothing happens. You just decided, you took the random, voluntary decision to say you were offended. Who cares? You don't have the right not to be offended. And that's always been the case, right? That doesn't mean to say once in a while you might not generally feel the verbal kick that someone's given you. I had a nut job shout at me this morning because he thought I nicked his space in the car park. Spoiler alert, I hadn't, by the way. He was just a filthy, stupid man. With a filthy, stupid van, I should say. There was some graffiti on the back of his van, which I don't think he'd noticed. Had he done so, it would have just made it a little bit more delicious. Nonetheless, the point is this. This is free speech, OK? Being offended doesn't come into the, when discussed. It's not even in any other business when it comes to free speech. I think mostly we are talking about stuff on social media, and we do know there's been another case this week, where a woman, she was an American woman, happens to live over here, also currently battling cancer as well, which kind of does, it's a somewhat, I think, necessary component in the story in terms of I've just come out of chemotherapy. Do I need a cop at the door to tell me I might have upset someone? Let's have a listen to that exchange that this one mother had with the police.
You better have a damn good reason for being here. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union and I'm an American citizen.
Something that we believe you've written on Facebook has upset someone.
You're here because somebody got upset. Is it against the law? Am I being arrested?
You're not being arrested.
Then what are you doing here?
My plan was, if you were admitting that it was you who wrote the comment, you could just make an apology to the person.
I'm not apologizing to anybody, I can tell you that.
The alternative would be that I have to call you in for an interview. I'm here to talk to you about the allegation. They've reported it to the police.
So what?
Obviously, we get a lot of reports like that.
Are there no houses that have been burgled recently? No rapes, no murders?
Yeah, that's all going on as well.
Well, then why aren't you out there doing, investigating those?
Because I've got to investigate everything that gets reported.
Well, you're not investigating houses being burgled.
No, that's not my job today.
Don't worry about the rapes and the murders. It's still happening, OK? You can sleep easy knowing there's a lot of that happening as well. This is outrageous on so many levels. I don't think anything the officer said there is strictly true. She hasn't broken any laws. And in fact, it's even worse than that because he says to her in that, just apologise, just apologise. What, really? Really? The old Bill are turning up to get someone to apologise to whoever who... And by the way, she doesn't know which post it was. She was never told that information. She might take her own guess. And the cop says, well, if you just apologise, it's all sorted then, isn't it? Literally, they mobilised an officer to go round someone's house because a person said, I'm upset by what somebody has written on Facebook. Now, if you threaten to firebomb someone's house or, I don't know, euthanize their chihuahua, then I understand that that might be a little tricky. That could be a very direct threat. That's not really what we're talking about in these kind of cases, is it? So yes, we have. Is it only social media, I guess, is my point here. Does the UK still have free speech? 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us, and we'll take your calls on that. And of course, there's lots of other sort of facets and components that you might want to throw in on the wider issue as well. Henry Hill is with us, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home. Henry, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Not for the first time we start by talking on that issue of free speech. I want to go back to the woman we were just talking about there. We did play that little clip of this pensioner. She happens to be an American, lives over here. She's a Trump supporter. She said she was left feeling like a criminal after the police showed up at her door over a Facebook comment. The police officer told Deborah Anderson to apologise or face a formal interview for the threatening post. That's how it was put to her. The pensioner's never been involved with the police. Let's have a listen to the interview she did on this exclusive interview that she did with Harry Cole. Here it is.
Did it make you feel like a criminal?
Yes, I've never been arrested in my life. I live a very quiet life. And here's the thing. Ultimately, it comes down to this. Pardon me. Even though I never found out what it was that I said exactly or what it was about, I even tried to find out roughly what it was about, and he couldn't tell me. The point is this: he said it wasn't against the law. This was not. He wasn't going to arrest me. I wasn't. I wasn't going to be arrested. So I'm kind of like, whatever it was I said doesn't matter, because if it's not an arrestable offence, then
why is he at your front door? Exactly.
Absolutely.
What's your message to Keir Starmer then? What's your message to the British government as an American citizen who's felt the tough end of the British state for seemingly no reason at all other than being, as you put it so succinctly, a bit mouthy on the internet? What's your message to the British government?
Well, I hadn't really thought this one through, but I would say that the British people are going to fight. You know, they're not afraid to fight. They've been quiet all this time. They've been polite. They've been well behaved. But I think they're going to push things too far. I think people are starting to get angry.
People are starting to get angry. Henry, when we ask the question, do we have free speech? Mostly, yeah, we do. But there are some disturbing elements that are creeping into our society, which I thought might get better. They appear to have got a little worse, and I think she's kind of evidence of that.
Well, I think the thing with a lot of this is that norms about how to approach free speech questions and other things, they take a long time in a bureaucracy to shift, right? So it might be that there's a change of attitude at the centre, but if you've got people in police forces, HR departments, councils and so on, who have for decades kind of come up through this system with this set of attitudes, you'll find that the outlying outposts of the state will continue to act like this. I mean, I find this case absolutely baffling. We don't have free speech the way America has free speech, for example. There is no absolutely enshrined right to speech. But the crazy thing about this is, as the lady was saying, it doesn't sound like it was a criminal offence, right? Yeah. Threatening is a criminal offence. And that means that if you're prosecuted, for example, it's the Crown bringing the prosecution. Yeah. If it's not a criminal offence and she could remedy it with an apology, that sounds like almost the definition of a civil matter. And the thing about civil matters is that, you know, if I want to bring a civil case against somebody, I have to do that myself. The Crown does not do that for me, and the Crown's institutions like the police don't enforce that for me. So it's baffling. I assume that this was some kind of misjudgment by somebody higher up in the police, whichever police force it was, because the police have absolutely no business enforcing things like this.
You would imagine as well, there's got to be, bearing in mind we're a couple of years down the line of seeing many of these kind of cases, whether it's the couple who wrote on the WhatsApp group about the governors, or whether it's about the man that said something that was misinterpreted about Israel and had his former police force, he was a former copper, whether it's about the multiple amounts of occasions where somebody has, I don't know, defaced a logo or something and posted. We've seen this quite a lot over the last couple of... You'd think by now in the police station, when a senior officer says to a junior officer, like, I want you to go down to Acacia Avenue and have a chat with Mrs. Miggins. She's been on the Facebook again. Doesn't somebody look at someone and go, Sarge, come on, not one of these cases. We all read about these. They're going to think we're a right pack of morons.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much freedom you have as a junior officer to say that to a senior officer. I mean, you know, think about any workplace. Would you say that to your boss? You're a journalist, right? When you were starting out, would you have, your editor asked you to do a story, would you have been like, come on, I think this story's rubbish.
Yeah.
Why can't I do something else? So I think actually one of the really unfortunate things about this, and we don't know whether or not, you know, there's lots of bad statute law in Britain that does have big implications for free speech. The Public Order Act 1980, I can't remember the year, 1980 something, which is allows the police effectively to prosecute you on the basis of, for inflammatory speech, if a hypothetical person might have been provoked by it. So it means that effectively you don't have to say something within earshot of somebody who might be offended.
That's right.
They can conjure up somebody to be offended. So I think things like that, and bad decisions by senior officers, they make fools of the police, because of course the senior officers who set this policy aren't the guy in the video, right? So he's now, you know, famous, right? Having to do this absurd thing where he's like, oh, I want you to come and apologize for hurting someone's feelings. Also, the fact that they wouldn't say what the post was is extraordinary, because one of the most fundamental things about British justice is the right to know the charges against you, right? We're talking about free speech, and obviously free speech is important, but one of the features of the most sort of Byzantine dictatorships is that you can be brought up on secret charges. And that is completely antithetical to the conception of British justice. The bare minimum, even if you don't have a complete free speech regime, the bare minimum for the traditional standard of British justice is that they should have said, you made this post.
Yes.
And this post was threatening. The fact that they're asking her to apologize, but not even, also, finally, it's worth pointing out, if she doesn't know what it was, the apology can't be meaningful. If you dragged me in front of a court and said, we need you to apologize for something you said online, but you won't tell me what it is, I literally can't apologize for it in any meaningful way.
I mean, it's just a nonsense. I mean, you don't even have to know anything about law. In fact, you don't have to know anything about anything to know that it's a nonsense. You know, what have I done wrong? We can't tell you. As you rightly say, it's, you know, the very echoes of all manner of fairly dark parts of history, and sadly some parts of the world as it is today. Not particularly democratic or British. Stay with us, Henry. We've got more to come. We can't resist Ed Davies' moment in the spotlight with Piers Morgan. I mean, this is an absolute belter. This is kind of like the old Michael Howard interview with Paxman years ago. It's got sort of echoes of that going on, but it involves a penis. And I wasn't talking about Michael Howard when I said that, by the way. We'll come to that in a couple of moments' time. Sadiq Khan is on the agenda with reference Donald Trump as well. And Mr. Trump returns to our big bag of savoury delights today after urging the Prime Minister to deploy the military to sort out channel migration. All of that and more on the way. We're asking the question. It's an obvious one, and I can't apologise for that. Does the UK still have free speech? 0344 499 1000.
The Muslim leaders in this country, those who are spreading and proselytizing the Muslim faith, believe they don't really need terrorism anymore to get their message across. They are doing it through the ballot box and the womb.
Exactly.
And that is an expression that was accepted by a leading Muslim member of the House of Lords. And this is the problem we face.
Yep.
While we sit there like frogs in a saucepan, the water's boiling. In fact, I think we're already hard-boiled. The Muslim leaders in this country, those who are spreading and proselytizing the Muslim faith, believe they don't really need terrorism anymore to get their message across. They are doing it through the ballot box and the womb.
Exactly.
And that is an expression that was accepted by a leading Muslim member of the House of Lords. And this is the problem we face.
Yep.
While we sit there like frogs in a saucepan, the water's boiling. In fact, I think we're already hard-boiled.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 22 minutes after 1 o'clock. Henry Hill is with us, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home. Absolutely cracking story, this one, Henry. The Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, appearing on Talk with Piers Morgan, has refused to say 10 times whether a woman can have a penis. During an interview with Piers Morgan, he said the vast majority, she, who knows? I'm sure Ed's relaxed about either. He said the vast majority of people identify with the same gender they had at birth, but there are few that don't. This is a beauty. Have a listen to this.
For the record, do you believe women can have a penis?
For over 20 years, we've had a Gender Recognition Act which has said that people who want to change their gender can do so.
But do you believe that women can have a penis?
I've explained that I think the vast majority of people have the same gender.
Not people, women. Can women have a penis?
So what I'm saying is...
Well, can they or not?
Well, there it is. I mean, we've been in this territory before. I mentioned before Michael Howard and Jeremy Paxman. It's sort of in that ballpark. Look, we've been talking about free speech, Henry. That's Ed Davies' free speech. He's entitled to say that. But there is a bit of you that thinks that and think, where have you been, Ed? Have you not been listening to anything lately?
I mean, the interesting thing about it is that he tried to wriggle out of offering an opinion by simply stating what the law was. And so when he was asked, do you think that women can have penises? He said, well, I believe in following the law, which is a completely different question, right? Because he wasn't being asked about whether he thought obeying the law was good.
Yeah.
He was being asked about his beliefs. And the fact that he didn't have the confidence to say so, I think, is telling about where this debate has shifted. Because I suspect his answer would probably be something along the lines of yes. And if he were given more time, he could possibly offer the sort of position that you can't change your sex, you can change your gender, which was the traditional distinction. So a biological woman is a biological woman, but the sort of social presentation of that can be different, or whatever. The other fascinating little thing in this interview is that at one point he was asked whether he'd ever met a woman with a penis, and he laughed and he said no, as if that was a ridiculous kind of fairy tale goblin
yes, that's right.
encounter. Look, I'd actually be extremely surprised if Ed Davey has never met a trans woman in his life. I mean, I have. If he does believe that you can change your gender, then the odds of him simultaneously doing that, moving in liberal political circles in London and having never met a trans woman, seems extraordinarily low to me. I mean, maybe it's one of those parties that's like formally progressive, but is in an unspoken way super trad in its actual culture. But nonetheless, I thought that was slightly odd.
Just a little. We'll take some calls and comments on that as well. Back to Donald Trump. We saw this yesterday, urging the Prime Minister to deploy the military to halve illegal crossings of migrants via the English Channel. Yesterday's press conference, he compared the issue to his US-Mexico border policies, claiming illegal immigration destroys countries from within. Here's what he said.
I told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
There it is. Well, it's typical Trump, Henry. I think we all agree on that. He just shoots from the hip. He's not worried about, using words that other people would never use, and he just says how it is. And there is a big appetite for that kind of speech, and we don't get that really from our lot.
No, there isn't. I mean, in part because I think I might be misremembering, but I think that senior figures in the Royal Navy have kind of publicly spoken out against the idea that they be used for any such purpose in the Channel, which in itself is fairly remarkable because, of course, another foundational principle of Western democratic culture is that the military obeys civilian orders, but that's a question for another day. There are challenges posed by police. Ironically, somewhat, this would not historically have been the case, but in the modern kind of legal cultural framework, there are challenges with policing a sea border militarily compared to a land border, because of course the question is always, when you deploy the military, what are they going to do? Right? Because without French agreement, we can't tow the boats back to France, because that's a violation of French territorial waters with warships, which is a fairly excitingly big step to take. We aren't going to be sinking the boats in the Channel, which is what people from sort of the year zero until about 1800 would have just done in these circumstances. A really useful illustration of this is during the Cod Wars. This great dispute with Iceland over our fishing waters, where we deployed a huge number of warships, I think far more than we actually have today, but we still lost because we weren't going to have those warships blowing up fishing boats. And so they were limited in what they could actually do. So I think that Trump is definitely speaking to a hunger for decisive action, which will have a big audience in Britain, but it's harder, even if you were willing to do it, to work out what the role will.
We seem to have slightly lost your line there, Henry. We may be able to get it back. We've almost hit the clock anyway. We are going to be speaking to the former head of the British Army as well a little later in the programme, because it is kind of interesting. It sounds great. Get the army involved. And I can imagine, just as Henry just alluded to, that there's probably quite a lot of people in the Army and the Navy go, well, I'm not sure what we're going to do or what we can do. But the one that we can all agree on, doing nothing is not an option. And I think the spirit of what Trump said was, look, you've got to be hard, you've got to be harsh, you've got to be honest, and you might have to be brutal. Just get it done. Henry is back with us. We lost your line then, Henry. Let's move on then, very briefly, if we can, Henry, to this. Donald Trump again, claiming he requested that Sadiq Khan be excluded from the state banquet during his UK visit, criticising him, calling him among the worst mayors in the world. Here's what he said.
I didn't want him there. I asked that he not be there. I don't want them. I think the mayor of London, Khan, is among the worst mayors in the world. And we have some bad ones. If you look at Chicago, but I think he's the equivalent of the mayor of Chicago. I think he's done a terrible job. Crime in London is through the roof. The mayor of London, Mayor Khan, has done a terrible job. And on immigration, he's a disaster. No, I asked that he not be there. He wanted to be there, as I understand. I didn't want him.
I mean, it's almost like he's being played by Ricky Gervais, Henry, isn't it? I mean, he's done a terrible job amongst the worst mayors in the whole of the world. I don't think Trump gets a say on whether he got invited to the banquet anyway, but I don't think that was ever on the agenda. But he does make, frankly, whether he realises it or not, I think personally, a very good point about Sadiq Khan. But he does get very animated about him.
Yeah, I mean, Sadiq Khan has been a very bad mayor of London. There's no disputing that, really. But I think the fascinating thing for me is just that it's so nice that that Americans have heard about British politicians for a change. Because for so long, there's been this wild imbalance where every second British politico has watched far too much of The West Wing, and a quarter of them have read Robert Caro. And you can talk to them and they'll be like, oh, have you seen like this by-election in Wisconsin? While they don't know half as much about British politics. And so actually hearing American politicians who are apparently now following the British politics soap opera, yeah, it's not great to live in the country that, is horrifying them so much. But on the other hand, it is interesting that finally that cultural connection seems to be cutting both ways in a way that it really hasn't previously. obviously.
100%. Listen, Henry, have a cracking weekend. We stop there. That's Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home. Thank you to him. Over to you shortly, 0344 499 1000. We've got a couple of voices as well we're going to be speaking to on that issue of free speech. Sam Armstrong joins us next. Also, slightly more from the left, Sebastian Salak will be here too. Most importantly, it's your calls, your comments and your voice notes. You know the number. If you want to leave a voice note, you kind of bypass the queue. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Comments from you. Derek says, it's 1984. Welcome to the police state. This is reference freedom of speech. One from Chris. If we are only sending back boat arrivals since the pilot scheme started, does that mean the ones who arrived before the scheme are exempt and definitely staying? It would seem that way. Yeah, I think that's how it works. Oddly, Rwanda was going to work like that as well. It was never going to be like people who come across tomorrow would then be sent to Rwanda. They would go to the back of the queue. It was sort of the other way round. Curious times. Shell says, we haven't had free speech in years in Britain. Shell's in South Shields. And one here from PHMJ who says, oh no, I think that was for Alex, actually. But nonetheless, I will happily read it during the break for my own amusement. 0344 499 1000. So we are talking about free speech. The Trump-supporting pensioner who says she was left feeling like a criminal. This was after the UK police showed up at her door over a Facebook comment. Have a listen.
Better have a damn good reason for being here. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union, and I'm an American citizen.
Something that we believe you've written on Facebook has upset someone.
You're here because somebody got upset. Is it against the law? Am I being arrested?
You're not being arrested.
Then what are you doing here?
My plan was, if you were admitting that it was you who wrote the comment, you could just make an apology to the person.
I'm not apologizing to anybody, I can tell you that.
The alternative would be that I have to call you for an interview. I'm here to talk to you about the allegation. They've reported it to the police.
So what?
Obviously, we get a lot of reports like that.
Are there no houses that have been burgled recently? No rapes, no murders?
Yeah, that's all going on as well. That's been...
Well, then why aren't you out there doing, investigating those?
Because I've got to investigate everything that gets reported.
Well, you're not investigating houses being burgled.
No, that's not my job today.
Well, the police officer told Deborah Anderson to apologise or face a formal interview for an alleged threatening post. The pensioner, who's never been involved with the police, spoke to Harry Cole, our own Harry Cole, in an exclusive that she has been made to feel like a criminal. Starmer, however, insisted yesterday that despite everything, the UK still has free speech. Here he is.
I'm all for free speech. I'm also for protecting children from things that will harm them, paedophiles, those that peddle suicide, which had a terrible consequence for individual, particularly teenagers. And so that's the balance we strike. But we have had freedom of speech in this country for a very long time, and we will always protect it.
And when it comes to freedom of speech, we are asking that question, do we still have it? What about in the United States? We usually point to America and go, yeah, they've got loads of it. But speaking on Air Force One last night, this is how when Trump was on his way home from his visit here, the president suggested TV networks maybe lose licenses after Jimmy Kimmel's suspension. This has sparked more free speech concerns over there and FCC pushback amid claims of political retribution. Have a listen.
That's something that should be talked about for licensing too. When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. When you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and you take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, and that's kind of is that a strange contrast? Because Donald Trump talking about, well, all they do is, like, take the mickey out of me. Well, you know, they are satirical shows that will always take the mickey out of whoever is in charge. That's kind of how satire and topicality works in that respect. And, of course, Trump is a little bit more than others in terms of the gift that keeps on giving, whether you love him or not. Let's discuss all of these issues. Sam Armstrong from the Free Speech Union is with us. I mean, let's start then, Sam, really with the woman who got the visit from the police. Each time we see one of these, I think we all find ourselves going, oh, that's the worst one I've seen so far. The parents who said something on a WhatsApp group about some governors, the poor former copper who had the old bill, his previous employer around his house, even giving it a search, which was even more sinister. And now we see this, a cancer patient sitting there in her own house, not even told, and this is almost as sinister as the alleged issue itself, the fact you're not told what your offence is. I mean, that's straight out of some sort of Maoist playbook, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course these are just the cases where the person involved has the good sense to either have a Ring doorbell that films it for them, or to get the camera phone out and film it. And you've got to wonder, how much is this happening? For just the three main speech offences that they use, there are 16 arrests, not even counting the ones like Deborah, where they go and visit their house, a day. For things that people have said online, we are seeing thousands of cases every single year of this happening. And it's no surprise that you see so many extreme circumstances when it just seems to be occupying such a massive amount of the police's workload. I mean, if they've got time to arrest 16 people a day for posts that they've made online, haven't they possibly got the time to make 16 arrests a day for shoplifting or burglary or any other of the crimes that ordinary people in this country are forced to face and encounter every single day with seeming impunity?
It does seem extraordinary that these... I mean, look, if somebody has written, go round to number 43 Acacia Avenue and shoot Harry Smith in the head, you know, we all understand that. That's a very direct threat of violence. If somebody libels somebody, we understand that as well. These are existing laws. We don't need new laws around this. But invariably, Sam, that's not what we're talking about here. And we've yet to see this woman's Facebook post. I can't imagine she said anything quite like that. She might have insulted somebody, so what? She might have offended somebody, so what?
Yeah, well, remarkably in this case, we sent formal subject access requests on Deborah's behalf to the police, and they claimed up until yesterday that they'd lost whatever the original complaint was.
Yeah.
Didn't really believe that. And then late last night, the Times newspaper get told that the comment was talking about pro-Palestine protesters in London, who we saw for weeks after weeks. Suella Braverman called them a hate marcher. She says, Deborah, says that as far as she was concerned, they're terrorists. And if she was Prime Minister, she would have them lined up and shot. Now, it's not the nicest comment on earth, but it's nothing that ordinary people don't think that they would do if they were Prime Minister for the day. I dare say it was unlikely that a mother of two cancer patient in Slough was ever likely to be Prime Minister. No. It wasn't an imminent threat of violence as the American standard is. It was a perfectly ordinary, perhaps intemperate political comment of the type that, you know, dare I say at talkTV, we get texted in every single day comments like that. And the police, rather than thinking, oh, well, back to your knitting, ladies, decided we're going to go around, have a knock on the door and try and challenge your thinking. And there seems to be this belief that it's their role to make sure that the internet is a nice place.
And I kind of, that's a very good point. And I also, Sam, find it extraordinary that, and maybe this is wishful thinking, that, you know, in the cop shop, when these things happen and, you know, the inspector says you've got to go round and see somebody over some posts. There's a woman called Deborah who's been a little bit salty with what she said. I mean, you might think there'd be a big old conversation in the canteen where the boys and girls in blue go, really? One of those? Sarge, have you not watched the TV? Have you not seen any of this? Do you know how these stories end? They always end with us looking a bit daft for going round there.
Yeah, I hope so, because it's really unfair to younger, more junior officers in the police. Because this poor officer here, I don't know the circumstances, but there's every chance that he was instructed he had to go and see her.
100%.
He seemed a little bit hapless when he got there, and he's ended up with his face and voice splashed across the newspapers because it's very possible that somebody more senior at Thames Police, and we know the types of figures that Peter Blexley comes on Talk a lot, will tell you the types of figures that rise to the top in the police are the wokesters. They've sent him here to do that, but it's him that's carrying the can for it.
Just a word, Sam, about what's going on over the pond in the United States. And it does always kind of disappoint me, and even Trump falls into this category. You know, if you ban somebody from a press conference or you tell a journalist they're fake news, and yes, of course, we all know there are some journalists and outlets over there in particular that really don't, in fact, they lose credibility because you want a certain level of neutrality in the news element of your output. You can have opinion, as we're doing here, but if our newsreader at 2 o'clock suddenly starts spouting their opinion, that would be a bit weird. So I know America hasn't always been perfect, but the Jimmy Kimmel thing does seem to have blown up here because, you know, Kimmel is somebody that, again, much like Charlie Kirk, most people probably won't have heard of, but he is a very, very well-paid, high-profile late-night talk show host. He dines out on satire, he dines out on topicality. Some of it isn't particularly to everybody's liking. This one was connected to Charlie Kirk, and he's been suspended, and in all likelihood probably won't come back again. Does that seem odd to you?
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. I always say to people that free speech restrictions are a bit like mustard gas. They're a great weapon to have until the wind changes. And Republicans that are now restricting Democrats' free speech because they run the country need to recognise that in 45 years' time, it's every bit possible that Democrats will be running the country again. And we saw what they did before, banning Trump off Twitter and all the rest of it, the kind of things they could do. Look, network television is a bit like the BBC over here in America, network television. It's a regulated thing, and people have to tell the truth broadly, and Jimmy Kimmel was wrong. He was plain wrong to say that Charlie Kirk's killer was MAGA. He wasn't. He was a far left.
Yes, he was demonstrably wrong in what he said. Correct.
And there has to be standards. But look, I don't think if we're being honest with ourselves that we think that Trump is entirely fairly applying the law here. He's having his own back, and I get the urge to do that. But I just warn everyone on my side. And look, I get the urge, I get the sense, but just be careful because they'll be doing it to us soon. And the best way to protect my speech is to protect theirs too.
100%. Listen, Sam, great to see you again. Thank you, Sam Armstrong, political consultant. He's with the Free Speech Union as well. Let's get a word from Sebastian Selleck, Labour councillor and commentator. Sebastian, good afternoon to you. I mean, it's always been around this one, as it's not an entirely new debate about do we have free speech. If I put the question like that, in terms of the UK, is it still there? Is free speech alive and well? What do you say?
Hey, Ian, good to be with you. Of course we have free speech, and you only have to look to the countries where they don't to see the stark difference between Britain and elsewhere. I mean, I think of Russia, where if you criticise the leader, you find yourself getting thrown off a balcony or disappearing in mysterious circumstances. You can say what you want about the Prime Minister here. You can be as rude as you want. You're never going to get holed up in a jail or shot or whatever else for it. That is what free speech really means. And I'm really pleased that we live in a country where that is the case. Now, of course, the police sometimes are going to get it wrong. They might arrest someone they shouldn't have. They might go and have a chat with someone who turns out to have done nothing wrong whatsoever. There will be mistakes made, always. But to say that that means we don't have free speech in this country, I think is a bit of an overreach.
We do need to keep it in check, though, don't we? Otherwise, we wouldn't have the police and all sorts of other institutions either banning people, firing people, getting them off social media, sending them to jail, etc. I mean, there are, you know, we know there's lines of responsibility, and there's a distinction between free speech and incitement, or free speech and violence and, you know, direct action to pick up arms or whatever. But it does need checking, because we do have incidents that are very, very disturbing.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think there's generally an argument that is made by some people that if you say something on social media, it can't possibly be bad, it can't possibly be illegal. The whole phrase, you know, I think back to Lucy Connolly, and maybe let's not get into that one, but so many people said she was arrested for a tweet, she went to prison for a tweet. It doesn't matter where you write it. If you incite violence, you've crossed a line and you need to face justice. So just because something happens on a place like Facebook or Twitter or wherever else, seem like these nice, private, safe places, it's still really serious if you say the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's that, isn't it? I mean, you know, social media is no longer kind of these sort of esoteric chat rooms that people would once go in. You know, you'd have country and western fans in one chat room, fans of politics in another one, and they could all kick off, and it could get rowdy or it could get funny, and nobody really cared, and no one ever thought of ringing the old bill. You know, these are now multi-billion-pound corporations that are publishing news, breaking news. Some places go to Twitter first, so their status is very different to what it once was. And of course, each time you put a tweet out there, you are publishing it in the same way as the people that publish a newspaper are publishing it. You have a responsibility. Tricky one, but you do.
Yeah, definitely. It's really a great equalizer. And anybody, especially now the algorithms have moved away from showing tweets from people you follow to the algorithm giving you what you think you might like. It really means you can get in front of a lot of people and not have a very big following. I mean, I put out stuff that gets sometimes over 1 million impressions, and I'm sure you do as well, and many other people do. Look, I'm just a councillor in East London. But the stuff that I write gets seen, and that means that I, as a private individual, have a great responsibility. We should all take that incredibly seriously.
Indeed. Sebastian, thank you. Sebastian Selleck, Labour councillor and commentator. Thank you to him. Over to you shortly. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk to Natasha Hausdorff in a moment. She is, of course, a barrister, a legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. This is after those comments, or that disagreement with Trump and Starmer yesterday. Coming up on 10 to 2, this is Talk.
the interest and to pay ever higher public sector pay rises, which is one of the main reasons that inflation is stubbornly high at 3.8%. That's what's worrying the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee. So we're in a doom loop.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Before we go back to your comments, I want to mention this. Yesterday's press conference, of course, it was the big one, Trump and Starmer, where the president rejected Keir Starmer's plans to recognise a Palestinian state and controversially proposed US control of Gaza, drawing a bit of a backlash. Trump said it was one of the few disagreements he has with Prime Minister Starmer. Here's what he said.
Hamas said that they're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time. So we have to remember that. So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our...
That's what he said. Starmer called the Gaza crisis intolerable, pushed for urgent aid and condemned Hamas as unfit to govern. Fairly obvious stuff. Meanwhile, support for the two-state solution among British Jews dropped to 49%, down from 78% back in 2010. Let's speak with the barrister and legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Natasha Hausdorff is back with us. Natasha, good to see you again. I'm sure you were delighted to hear Mr. Trump make those or reaffirm his position in the sense of not recognising Palestine. But give us then your reaction to Keir Starmer, who said this for a long time, but now it's official. We join other countries that recognises a terrorist-run area of this globe as a country, despite, I should add, it not ticking any of the boxes that actually constitutes a country.
Yes, well, the president's remarks were perhaps uncharacteristically diplomatic in the circumstances when one considers that the Prime Minister's position, as I think we may have previously discussed, ultimately does throw international law out of the window. Remarkable and hypocritical, one might think, for a lawyer and certainly a government that has professed an undying commitment to international law. Sure. So this is an announcement that is plainly driven by politics. I would perhaps suggest internal politics as opposed to international politics. But apart from undermining the international legal system, the legal order, and fundamentally encouraging Hamas, prolonging this conflict, enhancing the suffering for Palestinians and Israelis alike, I think there's also a very damaging impact to the interests of the United Kingdom here. This is ultimately self-harm for the UK. And I say that because Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, it's not clear, of course, who it is that Starmer is intending to recognise, but he said he opposes Hamas, so one is left with the so-called moderates in this equation, nonetheless the terrorist supporters of the Palestinian Authority, headed by Mahmoud Abbas, who does have a long track record of threatening to sue the United Kingdom. So providing him, even with an unsound basis, because of course the Palestinians do not have a state, but certainly providing him with an additional basis to perhaps pursue the UK, as he has previously threatened, as a form of state, is certainly not something that can possibly be in the national interests. And it brings to mind other issues that this government has pursued, of course, the Chagos issue, arising from very similar circumstances, an advisory opinion, not legally binding on the UK. Yeah. Nonetheless, perhaps, as many have argued, an act of self-harm by the United Kingdom. And I think we may be seeing more to come.
It's almost as if they don't know what they're doing, for goodness sake. I mean, on that point, though, Natasha, what do you imagine is, as you rightly said, Keir Starmer, he's not a stupid man. He's a bit of senior lawyer himself, head of the DPP, etc. he understands stuff, even if we find some of his decisions profoundly wonky in their execution. But he must have a logic himself. There must be, within his own framework of reality, he must have a reason why he thinks it's right and correct that the United Kingdom recognises a Palin state. What do you imagine that reason would be?
Well, seeking to put myself, into the mind of Keir Starmer, as terrifying as that prospect might be, I think it must ultimately come down to this: that the International Legal Academy, the international legal cabal, in some respects, has shifted very substantially. Through a political motivation, it seems to me, because it's not consistent with what real international law actually says. And this sort of dogma, this sort of everybody says approach, everybody says is not how you run a legal system, Ian, it's how you run a lynch. And increasingly, that sentiment has been pervasive across, first of all, as I say, the International Legal Academy, and increasingly international legal institutions, as they are being taken over, weaponized, abused even, to pursue a political agenda. So I think that's definitely got to be part of the equation. The fact that this is politics on an international scale, very much directing how international law is being abused here and weaponized. But we cannot escape the domestic situation and the threats that the Prime Minister faces within his own party, to his own party. The fact that we have 5 independent MPs that essentially stood on a Gaza-only platform, that is immense political pressure. But the big question has to be, what is in the interests of the United Kingdom? Not, frankly, the interests of a few individuals who are seeking to pursue a political agenda, a personal political agenda. At the heart of government.
And I can't for the life of me, I mean, it's quite obvious where my colours are planted on this, but trying to be objective, I simply cannot see in what interest this is, or whose interest this might be. Listen, Natasha, lovely to have you on again. Have a great weekend. Thank you for your time. She is Natasha Hausdorff, barrister, legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. What is the desire, the intrinsic desire from Keir Starmer to want to recognise a terrorist-run administration, Hamas, Palestine, as a country? It doesn't tick any of the usual boxes that you would require for a country, you know, everything from capital cities to administrations and democracy and all of those usual crazy things. None of that is on the list. Funny times. 0344 499 1000. We are talking free speech, of course. That's the big one this afternoon. Here's a voice note on this very issue from Mark in Norfolk.
Ian, just imagine if Starmer called a press conference and spoke in detail about that poor American lady suffering from cancer, receiving that visit from the police. Just imagine the success he would have with the electorate if he called a press conference and announced how disgusted he was with the police's judgment. All the best, Mark in Norfolk.
Mark, that's great, and you're absolutely bang on. We don't see that. You know, whether you like Trump or not, nobody is going to remove the irredeemable reality that when he stands up and says, I'm not having this, this is clearly nonsense, anyone can see it, you'd have to be a half-wit if you couldn't. I want a bit of that. I want a Prime Minister with some booster rockets once in a while. Right now, it's Talk. Let's get the news at 2 o'clock.
Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. So we are talking, there's a lot we're talking about here this afternoon. The Trump supporting pensioner says she was left feeling like a criminal after the old bill showed up at her door over a Facebook comment. The police officer told Deborah Anderson to apologise or face a formal interview for an allegedly threatening post. This is another sort of off-the-scale, overreach example of the state getting involved when they absolutely should not. Also this afternoon, Donald Trump has claimed he stopped Sadiq Khan from coming to the royal banquet during his state visit. This week, speaking to reporters on board Air Force One, the president said he had insisted that the London mayor not attend. Well, I guess that's kind of up to him as well. And simultaneously, Trump has rejected Starmer's plan to recognise a Palestinian state. Trump said it was one of the few disagreements he has with the Prime Minister. More on that and the other big stories of the day. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through at this end. Comments coming in from you. Simon says, if you say change the super, this is people getting, people having people arrested. If you say change the super gold-plated public sector pensions, people are complaining big time, and a warning is issued by LinkedIn, for example, to the individual. How's that? Yeah, I mean, you kind of wonder when it gets to people complaining about other people and stuff. And then I was thinking about Ed Davey. You know, because we're talking about free speech, and Ed Davey is kind of coming out with this bonkers stuff about, you know, he can't answer a question about can a woman have a penis, for goodness sake. And you'd think by now he'd have sort of really managed to kind of carve out a go-to reasoned answer to that. Because he's been asked before, even acknowledged in the interview with Piers Morgan. And he was asked by Piers a number of times, and he just couldn't really answer the question. In fact, on that point of Ed Davey, here's a voice note, comes from Sean.
Ed Davey is just another politician who falls into the conversation we had yesterday. No, too scared to have his own opinion, so we just allow somebody else to do it for him. This time it's the Supreme Court. Oh, well, the Supreme Court says. So, and he knows a woman can't have a penis. Everybody knows that. Humans have evolved to notice the opposite sex within milliseconds. Otherwise, none of us would be here. He's just another lefty-loving, all-inclusive, EU-loving, Palestinian flag-waving, lentil-munching moron, mate. That's all he is. And he's just as useless as the rest of them. Great show, mate.
Oh, Sean, that's lovely. Was it lentil munching? Lentil munching. You missed yoghurt knitting as well, Sean. I love that. And maybe even soap dodging. That often applies to some of it too. Great stuff. Let's get a word on the big stories around this as well. Dave Wooding, Sun columnist and legendary man and voice of a man of words on Fleet Street and Westminster for years. Afternoon to you, Dave.
Afternoon, Ian.
Always good to have you with us. I mean, let's have a look. Yeah, let's have a look at this Trump-supporting pensioner, which is just such a curious story. Left feeling absolutely, well, like a criminal, as she says, after the UK old Bill showed up at her door over a Facebook comment. Let's have a listen to how that exchange went with the police officer.
You better have a damn good reason for being here. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union, and I'm an American citizen.
Something that we believe you've written on Facebook has upset someone.
You're here because somebody got upset. Is it against the law? Am I being arrested?
You're not being arrested.
Then what are you doing here?
My plan was, if you were admitting that it was you who wrote the comment, you could just make an apology to the person.
I'm not apologizing to anybody, well, I can tell you that.
The alternative would be that I have to call you in for an interview. I'm here to talk to you about the allegation. They've reported it to the police.
So what?
Obviously, we get a lot of reports like that.
Are there no houses that have been burgled recently? No rapes, no murders?
Yeah, that's all going on as well. That's been...
Well, then why aren't you out there doing, investigating those?
Because I've got to investigate everything that gets reported.
Well, you're not investigating houses being burgled.
No, that's not my job today.
That's not his job today, Dave. I mean, it is a very sinister experience, isn't it, when the state essentially show up. And, of course, at the time, they wouldn't even tell poor Deborah what she'd done.
Well, there have been so many cases like this, Ian. We've had journalists having knocks on the door and people for putting things on social media very similar to what this unfortunate woman's had to suffer. You'd think the message would have got down to police chiefs by now. That this is out of order.
Yes.
The politicians don't like it. Keir Starmer's said he doesn't like it. What's making them still do it? Now, there was a case recently where a quote from a police chief constable recently who said, "We need the government to lay down the law to tell us where the lines are drawn on free speech." But hang on a minute. Where are the lines drawn on investigating burglaries? They don't seem to have any problem deciding which burglaries to investigate, which burglaries not to investigate, nor do they have any problems of where the law stands on investigating drugs. You walk around any street corner, you can smell cannabis coming out of the backs of houses. I mean, so they seem to be able to use their discretion on those sort of offences, but not on social media. It really is sinister.
It is. I mean, as you rightly said there, Dave, what's extraordinary is you think by now everyone is aware of these incidents. And, I've done a lot of work with the police, and when I sort of chair a conference or something like that with the police, I talk to those that do this job. They're all pretty much on the same page. They all think it's bonkers. They all think it's nonsense. No one wants to be sent out to it. So how this doesn't get up the food chain, I've got no idea. It would be a standing joke, wouldn't it, in the police canteen, that, someone's complained about Facebook. Because I remember years and years ago, in fact, when Facebook first came out, the police saying we're always getting called about stuff that's going on Facebook. But it wasn't quite the same as this. It was usually somebody threatening to have a fight in a neighbourhood, so they just drive a police car down the road to make sure no one kicks off. But this is something a step further. This is going into people's houses and on some occasions actually searching their houses, a warrant to have a look through the old drawers.
Well, and they don't drive down the streets anymore when there's antisocial behaviour going on either. They seem to be, you can't help but think this is all about, it's an easy job, going out and tackling, dealing with knife crime and gangs and offences like that, all take a bit of, getting out off your backside and getting out into the back streets.
100%.
Going knocking on the door of some elderly woman to pick her up about her social media posts is easy work, isn't it? You go and sit in there. You look quite comfortable in the armchair. The officer there, didn't he? Go and have a sit down in the armchair. She might give me a cup of tea. Yeah. Go back to the office, fill in a form, and then go home. Your shift's over.
Yeah, watch a couple of episodes of Take the High Road. It's just all you need to do. A cultural reference there for the kids, Dave, as you probably got. Let's move to this one. Again, it's a lovely moment of Donald Trump, the gift that keeps on giving, of course, who has told journalists that he requested Sadiq Khan be removed from or excluded from that state banquet on the UK visit, criticising him and calling him among the worst mayors in the world. I know the audio is a little bit tricky when they do these little interviews on board an aeroplane. I can't believe they haven't got that sorted out yet over there on Air Force One. But nonetheless, worth having a listen and a reminder what Trump said about the Mayor of London.
I didn't want him there. I asked that he not be there. I don't want them. I think the Mayor of London, Khan, is among the worst mayors in the world. And we have some bad ones. If you look at Chicago, but I think he's the equivalent of the mayor of Chicago. I think he's done a terrible job. Crime in London is through the roof. The Mayor of London, Mayor Khan, has done a terrible job. And on immigration, he's a disaster. No, I asked that he not be there. He wanted to be there, as I understand. I didn't want him.
As bad as the mayor of Chicago, Dave. Who knew?
They really don't like each other, do they? No. I mean, Sadiq Khan did make it clear he didn't like President Trump. I think when he was in office the first time round, there were demos about him coming, and he was in the forefront. I remember the blimps floating in was Parliament Square, if I remember correctly. It's payback time, I think, for Donald Trump, and he doesn't sort of forget things like this very easily. He's got a good memory, and he's very much one for breaking even with people in the end, I think.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? And I know we're in a kind of different world and a different sort of politics, and you know, Trump is, I suppose, the epitome of that kind of politicians behaving in very different ways. He doesn't read off one of those SPAD-written press releases. He just says what he thinks at the time. And it's very entertaining, and it's almost like I said in the last hour, though, like Trump is like a character that could be played by David Brent, couldn't he? I mean, there's so many kind of catchphrases and isms and moments. You could really capture that. You know, it's the worst, absolute worst, you know, like it's an official record that you could go to the Guinness Book of Mayors and find the worst mayor that ever existed was Sadiq Khan. And Trump will impart that as this, you know, incredible moment of fact. I happen, by the way, to agree with him. But I suppose if you're a Sadiq Khan supporter, you probably wouldn't. But he does liven up politics, doesn't he? And for people like us who do this for a living, I mean, it really is the gift that keeps on giving.
He's absolutely unpredictable. You could cut the atmosphere with a knife. He was sitting there nodding away while Keir Starmer was answering questions at the press conference, and you were looking at his face thinking, is he going to interject now and say something? The descriptions in the newspapers this morning were really funny. The Times said that Keir Starmer was like a lorry driver driving a cargo of nitroglycerine along a bumpy Andean road. That's how he described the expression on his face and the relief when it was all over and he delivered his cargo. Yeah. And I think the Sun went on about saying that Keir Starmer was like an army unexploded bomb disposal unit. You could, you know, clicking, cutting the next wire, not knowing whether it was going to explode any second. So there was that tension that you could feel in the press conference yesterday, which made it compulsive viewing if you weren't there. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, look at it on playback.
It really is. Although I don't know whether this kind of, I mean, as a proud Brit, I suppose, you know, we should, in theory, want our Prime Minister to succeed, even if you don't support them, as it were, and especially when it's something international. And I don't know what I felt about this. I spoke to a kind of, you know, for want of a better phrase, a source, you know, who in you know, White House terms, Capitol Hill, all the rest of it, that was telling me that actually Donald Trump really, it was emphasised, likes Keir Starmer. And in fact, he's the one leader that he would happily have a drink with, although Trump doesn't drink, but you take the point. He genuinely likes the man. And I thought, is that good, or am I devastated to find this out?
I think that's good, and I quite believed him when he said that yesterday. I could sense that he really meant it, and that there was a bit of warmth between the two people. The most unlikely roommates, but they were together doing that. And to answer your other point, Ian, I've travelled with prime ministers going back to John Major, David Cameron, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. Yeah. And I have to say...
Harold Wilson, Edward Heath, you know, I remember.
He was my MP, but I was not grown up enough then. I have been away with them, and I do feel, I don't know whether other journalists feel this, I've never actually spoken to them about it, but when you see them on the world stage standing there with the Union Jack behind them, representing our country and talking maybe with the president, whether it's the president of America or any other country he's in, I always feel a sense inside of pride and think this is our man, our woman who's out there batting for Britain, and I want them to do well. And whichever political situation they are, I want them to do well and deliver for Britain. And I feel a sense of pride when our Prime Minister, whoever he or she is, does well on the world stage. And I was pleased for Keir Starmer yesterday.
Listen, Dave, great to hear that. Lovely to have you on as ever. Have a cracking weekend. Dave Wooding, Sun columnist, legendary journalist of Fleet Street and Westminster. Thank you to him. Over to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. Lots of messages coming through. I'll come to those as well. You want to drop us a voice note? It's on the same number. Back with more comment from you coming next on Talk.
That summit in Alaska that Trump had with Putin looks not to achieve very much. Putin seems not to have been deflected an inch from his course. So Trump will be talking to Trump about whether he thinks there is actually any chance of Putin agreeing to a ceasefire and some sort of negotiation on a peace deal. And I guess Trump may be saying, well, what do you think about secondary tariffs on China and India? And I don't know, but you guys will find out in the media soon enough quite what position the British are going to take on that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 20 past 2. let's go to some of your calls and comments. Mike says, reference Keir Starmer, he does the polar opposite of what the majority of this country want time and time again. I'd like Trump to tear him a new one, exposing him for the pathetic weed that he is, says Mike in Chichester. Thank you very much indeed for that. Reference Ed Davey. Leon says, enjoying the show. Ed Davey refused to have dinner, which of course he did. Yes, he wouldn't go to the banquet. What a nut job. Because he didn't like him and his politics. Then surely he's just shown why no one should vote for him. Because how could he function as a Prime Minister or a deputy if he refused to meet with the people he didn't agree with? I mean, it was a stupid thing to do. You know, you look at somebody like Ed Davey, by all accounts, don't know the man, not even sure I've even met him. I think he's one of the ones that sort of eluded me over the years. I imagine he's a really lovely bloke, but frankly not fit for purpose. If you can't go to a banquet where, you know, if he disagrees with Trump, wouldn't that have been a great opportunity? Go to a banquet. He's not going to get a one-to-one with him. Kemi Badenoch got a bit of that, but he might have a moment. And he could actually then go, I told the American president, blah, blah, blah. Easy. Pav is in Harrow. Pav, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
On the Ed Davey note, a person who doesn't seem to understand elementary biology and refuses to accept a democratic vote, probably not the best way to explain and convey itself.
Fair point.
Just before I start here, just want to convey something quickly and preface my point about free speech. I'm just so glad that you're discussing it, because with all due respect to Kimmel and everything else, I thought I'd move to America with the disproportionate level of attention that has got. One can only imagine and surmise that if something like that happened in this country, how much relevance that would be in America. It is an issue, it's fine, but I'm not terribly sure that all the pages that have been dedicated to it quite, tally in, given the fact that we've got politicians in this country who for the last 3 years have been banging on and on in Parliament about issues, for example, in Palestine, rather than, for example, what's happening in Dudley North, to coin a phrase. Maybe that's just something to do with national interest. But anyway, I won't get on to, I'll talk to you about this. You and I have spoken many times, we will again, Mr. Collins, about this, the freedom of expression and the way they're being curtailed. Unfortunately, the problem, and it's always a problem, is that governments have to respond in real time to situations which, unfortunately, will result in curtailing. The obvious examples that are in place, and they always will be, incitement to violence, etc., they're not going to go anywhere. People who say they are or who claim they're free speech absolutists are nonsensical. And I'll get on to that in a second. The concerning thing about this issue, this particular incident that you highlighted, and I've said this to you before, we've seen enough of these. They're not just a one-off. There are anecdotes, and we've seen videos. The Free Speech Union reported them. The concern that I have as a citizen is when these incidents take place, what is the internal procedure going on? Why is the person or people who have authorized these things not being held accountable, for example? Right? You then turn around and you have the situation with the chief of constabulary. Why are they not necessarily being held accountable if these things continue to happen? Ultimately, the Home Office and the Home Secretary. We have these situations. There's a little bit of rage, rightly so, because there are far more important things to concentrate on, even if this falls within criminal remit, and I have my doubts it does. But that's the problem. As I think one of your early contributors said, this isn't the action of or the arbitrary action of a police officer or some low ranking. Somebody is authorizing them. Why are we not turning around and looking at those people, shining the light of transparency and holding them accountable? The aspect, of course, that I have a concern with, Ian, and the broader aspect is people should be concerned, and I'm not one of these conspiracy theories. You and I have spoken many times. You know what I say. I try to say as transparently as possible without too much speculation or conjecture. However, we have had pretty much over the last 3 decades a continuous curtailment of our ability to say things, our ability to do things. Now, I can understand them in certain situations, albeit when the Terrorism Act of 2006 was being talked about. Remember, this was one of the things where people wanted others to be detained for 6 weeks without charge. I mean, that was just horrific in itself. And then, of course, you had the same shambolic stuff, Ian, you'll recall, when the councils were looking through, dog excrement and your bins using the same powers. The problem that we've got, you'll recall that, it was a ridiculous situation. We've had it for 3 years, right? The problem that we've got isn't necessarily one of the police force. And sometimes I do feel for them. They don't help themselves. I do feel for them because a lot of the time they're following instructions. But you look at stuff like Blair's RIPA or Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. You look at Theresa May's Snoopers Charter, etc. They're all going to one particular end. And if people are serious about turning around and addressing addressing these issues and addressing the fact that, you know, not just our freedom of expression, but most of what we are allowed to say and do is significantly being curtailed. You only need to go back to Wuhan virus and the pandemic. Whatever anybody's situation was, and credit to you, and I'll say this every time for as long as I'm alive, to you and your radio station, you were probably the only outlet in the UK that allowed people to dare to dissent. And I'm not talking about taking an anti-vax or anything, just simply to say...
No, it wasn't that. It was actually just having a different view and saying, are we doing this quite in the right way, or is there a better way maybe? It wasn't hysterical stuff, as you've rightly pointed out, Pav. It was, you know, I'd like to think measured, and our audience were brilliant at joining in on that. Listen, Pav, I have to move just because of time. Lots to be said on this, and as ever, you make a great point. Thank you. Deborah says, I disagree with you, Ian. I don't think Trump likes Starmer. It's all for the cameras, and I think he knows Starmer is useless. He does love our country, though, but hates how it's being run. No, actually, it wasn't my view, Deborah. I was quoting a contact on Capitol Hill who works very close with this administration. It was him that said Trump likes Starmer, and the one leader who's a bit of a go-to man when it comes to those kind of... You notice when they're kind of some sort of international incidents going on, and Starmer always seems to pop up, or he's had a phone call with the president, and it killed me when I heard this, that Donald Trump actually likes, not tolerates, but actually likes Keir Starmer. Didn't seem to make any sense to me. But who knows? I'm sure that somebody else will tell the story differently. Matthew's in Cheshire. Back to Ed Davey. What are you making of it, Matthew? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Oh, my God. Ed Davey is wetter than an otter's pocket. What does he stand for? Come on. I don't think he's got a penis, never mind women.
Wow.
What, please?
It's never been confirmed, to be fair.
Have you ever watched him on PMQs?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I'd rather pull teeth.
There's not a lot going on, is there? Of course, in the run-up to the election, he did a lot of stuff involving water and kind of falling into it, didn't he?
I don't understand. The Lib Dems only got the number of ministers because of the Tories were so bad. Everyone, you know, the time before that, I think they had about 6.
They started off with about 59 in 2010 when they had the coalition, and then they got obliterated in 2015 and ended up with a handful. I can't remember the number, and then somehow they shot back up at the last election, as you rightly say, Matthew, because they weren't the Tories, which is exactly how Keir Starmer ended up with this majority, right?
And Keir Starmer's going to go exactly the same way. He's, you know, the last 3 weeks, I'm a big convert to Talk Radio because I was listening to Talk Sport, which is another great station.
Yeah.
But you've really opened my eyes. Every single station has just made me realise we've got terrorists, convicted terrorists for making bombs walking our streets. We've got a town where there's immigrants, basic sex offenders, and lurking around our children. We've got police knocking on little old ladies' doors because they've not met my mum. They'd be around my mum's house every day to what she puts on Facebook. It's scandalous. Yeah, they won't go looking for people who've had their mobile phones robbed. They won't.
It really is quite bizarre. And as you rightly say, I mean, if you wanted to find some real offence, I don't dispute, I'm sure you don't either, Matthew, that there are people that write stuff on social media that probably is worth investigating, like I'm going to come round your house and kill your children, or whatever, direct threats. I get that, and there's loads of that out there. So where are they? Or the horrible video. I'd rather somebody got a visit from the old Bill because they want to post a, I don't know, the sort of horrendous... You see a lot of those bullying videos or animal cruelty videos that aren't being posted in defence of animal rights. They're being posted like, oh, my God, look at this. Those kind of sickos. I would get that a little bit more. But, somebody who just calls someone a fence, I mean, get in the bin. Matthew, great call. I've got to cut in, only for time. You were brilliant, though. There's some great comments and a conversion from TalkSport. I was working with a couple of the TalkSport guys this morning. They are in the wall just behind where I'm sitting, so they're not million miles away. This one from David in Teesside. Great show. The UK government are going to recognise the Palestinian state. So the UK government are going to recognise Palestinian state. Doesn't this mean that by doing so, they are also showing support for Hamas? Well, that's what I would have thought, which because Hamas are a proscribed group is illegal. Therefore, will the Met be raiding the Commons and arresting all MPs who support this action? It's a great point. On that issue of free speech, let's get a voice note. This comes from Wayne.
Would you say that the Overton window has very sharply swung to the right and aggressively very quickly? Because I don't think anybody, any normal person, day-to-day person, whether they're involved in politics or not, don't believe a single thing that comes out of a lefty. Like, they just know it's absolute nonsense. And the constant side of the left, and I include Keir Starmer in this, of calling everybody far right, it's like nobody's listening. Like, the whole country is just tone deaf to what this government has to say. And then you bring the police involved. Now people are educating themselves and saying to the police, hang on a minute, no, I'm not going to come answer your questions, because you shouldn't be policing Facebook. You should be doing proper jobs, doing the proper crime and doing the burglaries, etc. and everything else, not coming after me because you want me to apologise to somebody that got offended on Facebook. Being offended is not a crime.
And that is the point, isn't it? Thank you, Wayne, for that. Beautifully put. Being offended is not a crime. Which bit of that can you not get your head around? Being offended is not a crime. You don't have the right not to be offended. Are you really suggesting, I think Ricky Gervais makes this point, that you should go through your entire life without being offended? Is that honestly? Are you as delicate and brittle and narcissistic as that to believe you should go through this journey of life as a human being and never be offended? And if you are offended, you'll call on the Rozzers and the authorities and the beak to sort it out. I mean, good Lord, sort yourself out, give your head a wobble and have a day off simultaneously. We are going to talk about the issue around Trump's advice to Starmer yesterday. Get the military in. Lord Richard Dannett, he's the former head of the British Army, joins us next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk 25-3. Now, Donald Trump urged the Prime Minister yesterday to deploy the military to halve illegal crossings of migrants via the English Channel. In yesterday's press conference, Mr. Trump compared the issue to his US-Mexico border policies, claiming illegal immigration destroys countries from within. Let's have a listen to what the President said.
I told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
That's what he said. Is it the job of the... I'm not sure how much of the military Mr. Trump is using in this respect, but either way, he believes he's had success. Let's speak with former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannett is with us. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Ian, good afternoon to you.
Always nice to speak. I mean, I suppose initially the military, the armed forces, as we, I suppose, would say, it's not ordinarily their terrain to look at this, but of course the army, along with other elements of our military, as you know better than anyone, do from time to time do things that aren't necessarily conventional. Is this one of them, do you think, or could this be one of them?
Well, it certainly could be one of them. Do I think it's very likely to be one of them? At the present moment, no. I think let's start this from where President Trump started it. He has made much of the fact that he's managed to close the border between the United States and Mexico. Now, let's just think about that border. It's a long land border. He's been able to put up his great big wall and fence and patrol it with National Guard and other military, and effectively close down the flow of illegal migrants from Mexico into the United States. Now, the situation here in the United Kingdom is very different. Yes, we're an island, and that means that we're surrounded by water, but relations with our European nations, our neighbours, are quite complex. And I think this issue has very much to be tackled in a whole variety of ways, one of which is getting increased cooperation from the French. And although some commentators have said it's a job for the Navy, call out the Navy, well, once these little boats get into the high seas, if we intercept them, as we do with border force vessels and with lifeboats as well, under the international law of the sea, the people on board become our responsibility. So we're effectively escorting them here. Now, I think the battle, if you like, has got to be fought on the French beaches. And that means that we've got to persuade the French government to do more, the French police to be more bold, and, of course, if they would accept it, but I'm not sure they would, perhaps accept British policemen or British soldiers to thicken up their strength on the beaches and stop the people getting into the water in the first place. But, of course, that's only part of the problem. Yeah. The major part of the problem, as we know, is to stop them getting to the beaches of France in the first place, which means cracking down even harder on the smuggling gangs, making it less attractive for people to want to come to the United Kingdom, having deterrent measures. The Rwanda one wasn't very popular, it was cancelled. The one in, one out seems a bit token, but all this range of things have got to be put together to try and solve this problem. But just saying it's a job for the military, that's shorthand and not very effective.
Maybe that message would be better given to President Macron in France. I mean, perhaps there would be more kind of substance in military assistance given the situation that occurs there, because this is about stopping people in the first place. It's about intercepting gangs, having a very robust response to that, whether that's from police enforcement, law enforcement or military. I mean, it may be more useful at that end than this end.
Well, I think that's absolutely right, because the problem is that they use the French Channel beaches as their springboard to come to this country. I think there's a lot to be said for the French doing more, and in the very last resort, the French civil authorities, the military and the police, doing more, and in particular, more patrols on the beaches, more willingness, dare I say it, to puncture the boats and make them unseaworthy. So these unfortunate people can't put out to sea in the first place. But again, it begs the question why more of them, if they've come to France, aren't seeking asylum in France, why they feel they've got to try and make an illegal entry into Britain. And of course, what President Macron would say is, come on, you Brits, you actually make it too comfortable for people in Britain. You put them in hotels and you look after them and you feed them. Well, maybe we should be a little bit harsher in that regime. Now, here's a difficulty. We know we need migration into this country, legal migration by people with visas, with the right skill sets, and we've got to create an environment for them that is welcoming and that they're not chased away by xenophobic flags flying on lampposts and all that kind of stuff. So we need legal migration because we need it to boost our workforce. But we've got to absolutely bear down on this illegal migration, and I think it's more of a job for the French than it is for ourselves, although we mustn't absolve ourselves of responsibility.
Indeed, I tend to agree with that. And I do wonder, Richard, whether you look at this when you consider your time served in the most senior of position in the army. And of course, you didn't go in at that level, of course. You made your way through the system. But you would have looked at certain dilemmas and issues around warfare and peacekeeping and whatever it might have been. You know, really, when you've got to second-guess people, that game of playing kind of geopolitical chess, when you're wondering what's happening, you know, over there, this administration, how are they going to respond to this? What's going to happen next? Where will their next move be? So there's all of these ramifications on any given dilemma, and you were involved, obviously, in decisions that required, you know, some real intelligent thought. A lot depended on it. Do you look, though, at the Channel thing and think, wow, what we're ultimately talking about here is stopping a load of people in some boats crossing the water. We're not talking about... We can fire people off to the moon. Elon Musk can even make a rocket reverse back into its little launching pad. We can do all sorts of things. We can speak through brick walls on the other side of the world due to Wi-Fi, but we can't stop these little boats coming over the English Channel. That does seem, when you put it like that, it's utterly bizarre.
Well, I completely agree, and I think that's why it requires a whole of UK government approach and very close cooperation with particularly the French and the Belgian authorities on their side of the Channel and the North Sea to work cooperatively and collectively together. There's going to be no single solution to this. As I said a moment or two ago, I think even more bearing down on the smuggling gangs, blocking the measures by which rubber boats can find their way to the sea. I think the French police and authorities doing more to disrupt people getting into the boats and getting off the shore is part of it. I think a deterrent measure, and maybe looking back at something like the Rwanda measure wasn't perhaps in hindsight perhaps so awful, and that something like that, which could be deterrent, should be considered again. A ramping up of this one in, one out, I think it should be one in, many out, actually. To put all these things together. But I do come back to the other point, and I think President Macron has a point. Maybe we as a society are too welcoming and too kind to people who come here by illegal means. We look after them very well. A high proportion of them then get granted asylum. So frankly, we're saying, if you can get here, by and large, we'll let you stay here. We'll look after you. You can get free health, you can get free accommodation. Maybe eventually you'll get a job, you'll get a work permit, and you'll be absorbed into British society. That's a pretty attractive offer if they believe it's actually there for them. So I think there are many, many strands, and it needs, from the Prime Minister down, all the elements of government, and with the French government and the Belgian government, to work heavily or strongly and collectively and collaboratively together to solve this problem and to do so quickly. Indeed. While you're with us, Richard, a word, if you would, sir, on the other element of that press conference yesterday. Trump criticising Vladimir Putin. He suggested Mr. Putin had let him down by hindering efforts to resolve the Ukraine conflict. Let's have a listen to what Donald Trump had to say.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out. But that turned out to be, I thought it might be among the easiest of the group.
I actually thought, Richard, that was the kind of biggest statement, interestingly, from the entire press conference, really. That was a very overt, unequivocal comment about Putin. They'd met on the tarmac in Alaska just weeks ago, handshakes as they met along those red carpets. It looked as if something might happen, and fast forward, here's the president saying, he's let me down. Is that it, do you think? Well, I think what we saw and what was being admitted yesterday was a strategic miscalculation of some proportions by Donald Trump. During his election campaign last year, he said he could end the war in a day. He believed he had a business-to-business, if you like, man-to-man relationship with Putin, and having a sensible chat with my friend Vladimir
would find a way of ending this war. Oh, and by the way, if that Mr. Zelensky doesn't really agree with me, I'll lean on him. Well, I think what Trump has had to realize is that Putin is playing his own game here. To use his own words, I think Putin is tapping Donald Trump along. And actually, I think Donald Trump has had to realize that we Europeans, led significantly by the British and the French and the others to a degree, are standing four square with the Ukrainians. And that's really important for Ukraine, and it's really important for European security. So I'm afraid Trump has had to realize that his sort of, well, we'll sit down over a table and have a chat about it approach to Putin is just not going to work. He's got to toughen up, increase his support to Ukraine, encourage our further support to Ukraine, and also slap tougher sanctions on Russia and make the pips really squeak amongst the people in Russia. This war has got to hurt them. Our lives on. We don't like the cost of everything here.
I was about to add to that, Richard. I thought when the King spoke at the banquet, and he, quite deliberately, and that would have been a speech, as you will know, that was written with all manner of characters involved in making sure the right things were said. But he did explicitly make the point about standing with Ukraine, and I thought that was a very telling moment. And that's really the kind of language, perhaps we're going to need to hear more of from the American president.
Well, I think you're right. We Europeans have no option but to stand foursquare with Ukraine. Ukraine effectively is fighting the war on our behalf to blunt Russia's aggression. Now, what Donald Trump has got to realize, yes, he may be distracted by what's going on in China and China's growing strength and issues over the Indo-Pacific and Taiwan and whatever. But he also has to realize that historically, the United States has had a major interest in the security of Europe. And it's no good him shrugging his shoulders and just saying, leave it to the Europeans. Yes, the Americans are going to do less, but they've still got to do some. And at the end of the day, they've still got to underpin NATO's fabric and infrastructure. They've done it for the last 70 or 80 years, going to have to go on doing it certainly for a while longer, while Europe grows its own capability even more. And there's an issue. We've all got to find more money, spend more money on our defence, not because we want to fight a war, but we want to deter a war and make sure that our armed forces and capability is greater than it is now to face this Putin chap down.
Richard, as ever, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Have a lovely weekend. He's Lord Richard Dannett, former head of the British Army. Your thoughts on what he just had to say? 0344 499 1000. And, of course, we'll take your messages on 87222. By way of a crunching gear change, we've got the Voice of Doom, day 5, I think it is, on the way in a couple of moments' time. More comment coming from you as well. Time now, just gone 2:45. This is Talk.
The Muslim leaders in this country, those who are spreading and proselytizing the Muslim faith, believe they don't really need terrorism anymore to get their message across. They are doing it through the ballot box and the womb.
Exactly.
And that is an expression that was accepted by a leading Muslim member of the House of Lords. And this is the problem we face.
Yep.
While we sit there like frogs in a saucepan, the water's boiling. In fact, I think we're already hard-boiled.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 10 to 3. OK, Voice of Doom, day 5. Remember, this is a mystery voice bit, but it's political, so it's always usually a politician, past or present, could be from any era, dead or alive. Very simple question. Who is this?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
If you think you know, do not phone, because we haven't got any prizes at this end. However, you can message 87222 if you fancy having a crack at it. 87222. Here it is again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
A correct answer will be revealed on the other side of the news if somebody answers it correctly. If not, it rolls over to Monday. 87222. Here it is again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
If you think you know who that is. Let's go back to your calls. Richard is down in London. What have you got for us, Richard? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian. It was actually quite depressing listening to Lord Dannett in a way, because the point Trump is making is that there's a difference in worldview between the British and the Americans. He actually said the last time he came here, when he was getting on the plane, he said France and Britain are being invaded. He actually used those terms. And the point Trump is making is that there is a political will in America to use the military to control the borders, and there is not the political will in Europe. And we know why, because politicians like Macron and Starmer actually believe in open borders.
Yeah. And do you know what? Can I just say, Richard, I 100% agree with you. I thought even if he wasn't specifically, you know, maybe the military thing was a metaphor,
Yeah.
I think what he was saying is essentially grow a pair and get tough.
Yes, that's what he's saying. Yes, I mean, that's what he's saying. And the reality is, until we grasp some of these nestles, we're going to go around in circles. It's a little bit like the discussion about free speech. I mean, to me, this is very, very clear. What it comes down to is that for the last 50, 60 years, we have sacrificed free speech on the altar of race relations and multiculturalism. I mean, this is a little-known fact, but actually, if you go back to 1955, Winston Churchill expressed his support for a campaign, effectively, to stop Commonwealth immigration, and he actually said, "Keep Britain." Now, I won't say what he said, but the implication was keep Britain Caucasian. Now, we both know, Ian, that if a politician said that today, he would simply he'd be in prison. Yeah. So we've got to have the guts to admit that we've changed our laws so as to accommodate what used to call race relations, what we now call multiculturalism. And it's almost pointless talking about free speech, because if we haven't got we at least have to acknowledge that that's what's happened, then try and work out what the options are. But it does seem as though we kind of go around in circles.
We do. We seem to enjoy the circular thing of life. I don't know how we got there, but we certainly are in that very place. Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. Little bit of breaking news. We're just hearing over the last few minutes. 2 ambulance workers have been arrested over the death of 6 adults, according to Wiltshire police. A man in his 30s was arrested on suspicion of 6 counts of gross negligence manslaughter and 4 counts of ill treatment or willful neglect by a care worker in June 2024. Police also arrested a 59-year-old woman on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. Wiltshire Police said the 2 South West Ambulance Service workers have been released on bail while further investigations continue. I'm really not sure the context of how that has happened. We'll bring you more when we know it, but that's the latest from Wiltshire Police. Matt's in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matt? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, very good afternoon, Ian. On what that last gentleman just said, if somebody said, keep Britain Caucasian now, they would be Prime Minister within a couple of years. They wouldn't be chastised or lambasted.
Do you think they would?
I think if somebody went that far, it would attract them even more than Reform are attracting them, because this idea that even minorities will be offended that Britain is a white country is just total lunacy. I think Tony Blair and Labour and all the political class have created a system where basically the political class and minorities can slag off and criticise indigenous people, but indigenous people can't say anything about minorities. So if I had £1 for everybody that said to me in the last 20 years, I'm not racist, but it's like a precursor to, I'm going to say something about immigration, and I don't know whether you're a lunatic or not, and whether or not you'll think I'm a fascist if I say it. And usually it's just a normal run-of-the-mill comment about...
Yes, you don't. If you're just going to make an observation about multiculturalism or immigration or anything like that, doesn't matter who you're speaking to. Black, white, brown, red, yellow, green, purple. Could be anybody. Male, female, gay, straight. Who cares? You should be able to say it if you're just making an observation. I suppose what happens is when somebody does say something that is quite clearly, a bit unnecessary, and we all know what those comments sound like, Matt. And somebody caveats is, look, I've got plenty of black mates, but it's just that I wouldn't want to live next door to somebody who wasn't white. If somebody says that, then you're in a bit of different territory. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But if someone said, I don't want to live in a town that's 70% Muslims, when it was 20 years ago, 90%.
Yeah, you are literally culturally allowed to make that comment. And you should be able to. There's a big old, is it in your neck of the woods, this super mosque going up? Is it in Cheshire?
No, that's in Cumbria.
Cumbria, that's right. Yeah, well done.
I think that will get stopped.
Things like that, I think you're allowed to go, well, just a sec, there's nothing to do with the fact that we don't have freedom of worship and freedom of religion. We're in a different territory if we are looking at an expansion of religious buildings of faiths that are not the indigenous faith. That doesn't mean you can't study other faiths, but you have to just kind of keep that in check if you want to retain some kind of cultural equilibrium. And why would we apologise for that? Why would anybody apologise for wanting to retain their culture? I always say the same thing, Matt. If this was on a BBC documentary and it was about some group of people living in South America, people would be raising money for them.
Of course, it's just... The mosque in Cumbria is just a purposeful gob in the eye to a specifically white area.
Yeah.
That the left they'll make that happen as much as they can, just to insult those people.
I don't even know why you'd need it. There's plenty of mosques around. You wouldn't actually need it. It does sound like somebody is. And again, even when I'm saying this to you, Matt, and I know you can, you're good at these kind of conversations, but I'm aware of the words that you use because somebody somewhere might go, that sounds a little bit, I don't know, Islamophobic or whatever phrase somebody has chosen this week. When it isn't really, it's just about, at what point did it become controversial to want to suggest that there are certain things that are central to a socially cohesive, sing from the same hymn sheet society and, what you might describe as a sort of cultural fulcrum on which we can kind of pivot and function from.
It's a way that the left, and that includes the last Conservative governments, use to control speech, which then stops people complaining about the things that they do without their instruction.
Yeah, got it. Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. Matt in Cheshire. It's funny because I had that, the Cumbria Mosque story. Had that on my radar at the beginning of the week because I think it got the go-ahead again, but I think there's still maybe process. I thought there's something in this to discuss, and I wasn't quite sure what, but Matt has just raised it there. We are going to be bringing you some the latest, assuming we get more information. 2 ambulance workers arrested over the death of 6 adults, according to Wiltshire. Policeman in his 30s arrested on suspicion of 6 counts of gross negligence manslaughter and 4 counts of ill treatment or willful neglect by a care worker. Also a 59-year-old woman arrested too on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. More on that on the way. And, of course, more from you on a variety of subjects. Does the UK have free speech? 0344 499 1000. We've also got the voice of doom. Do you know who this is?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
87222 if you want to give it a go. In the meantime, the time is exactly 3 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines on Talk.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any 2 nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the home of common sense. Lots to talk about. Donald Trump yesterday urging Keir Starmer to do whatever it takes to halt the small boat crossings, even deploying the military. The former US president called on the Prime Minister to adopt his hardline approach that he used on the US-Mexican border. Essentially, I think what he was saying, whatever the specifics, was you got to get tough. Get tough, you can make it happen. But what is the answer? Also this afternoon, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey has refused to say 10 times whether a woman can have a penis. I mean, it's a curious one, that, isn't it? Because you might think, well, it's quite obvious, the answer. However, it has, of course, spewed into that same debate about the curious nature of the gender debate, which is the kind of the debate that if you had 20 years ago, people would have thought you had something wrong with you. Have you heard what they're talking about men and women? It's weird. Got to take them away somewhere. And now, things have changed. And Trump has urged Starmer to boost North Sea oil, calling wind power an expensive joke. I bet that went down well over there at Downing Street at the moment, but it would have been widely welcomed by, I'm sure, the Reform UK boys who would concur. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Just before the news, it was the voice of doom, the political mystery voice bit. The question was, who is this?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
These are some of the answers we got. Peter Lilly, no. Lord Ancram, no. Jeffrey Archer, it is not. Sir John Knott, it is not. Harry Seldon, no. Mel Stride, no. Matt Hancock, no. In fact, we didn't get a right answer. It rolls over after the weekend. It's back on Monday at around about 2:45. So, Donald Trump, that is, has urged the Prime Minister to deploy the military to halve illegal crossings of migrants via the English Channel. In yesterday's press conference, Trump compared the issue to his US-Mexico border policies, claiming illegal immigration destroys countries from within. Let's have a listen to what Trump said.
I told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
We have to remove them. Get tough, I think. Meanwhile, an asylum seeker was arrested to school after staff spotted him on the school field. The man was arrested for failing to attend court for alleged offences outside of Essex, later released on bail. We keep seeing these kind of stories. It is a confusing picture. Let's speak with Damien Green, former Deputy Prime Minister and, of course, former Immigration Minister as well. Damien, good afternoon to you. You know full well, more than most, every time I speak to anyone who did this job, the job you used to do, Home Secretary, any of that kind of area, immigration, home affairs. This is never ending. I know it's very topical now and has been in the last sort of 5-10 years, but it's always been there, hasn't it? It's almost the Gordian knot of running a country, how to sort out immigration or illegal immigration.
Yeah, I mean, sticking with illegal immigration, because of course governments can control legal migration to a much greater extent. Illegal immigration, it's not. You say it's sort of never ending. The sort of cliche, if you like, I would reach for is it is a game of whack-a-mole. You stop one route and then the criminal gangs find another route. I mean, it's more than 10 years now since I was Immigration Minister. And what we did then were two things. We closed down hundreds of bogus colleges. Remember the bogus colleges? Yep. They were the big thing 10, 12 years ago. But also very relevant to the boats and all of that. We put X-ray machines in at Calais for people coming across on the backs of lorries. That was the way they came across then. And that massively reduced that traffic. So it can be done, but you have to keep finding new ways to cope with the new routes that people find.
And those new routes, I mean, ever more imaginative. It used to be, I suppose, in terms of illegal immigration, people would literally run through the Channel Tunnel, jump on the top of a lorry, or even hide in the boot of somebody's Fiat 500. I mean, that's seemed to used to be a common way of trying to get across here. When you look at the boat crisis, I know this isn't under your watch specifically, but does it seem... does it feel like the same numbers that were coming just via different methods, or is this a hugely increased industrial scale trade?
It feels like more. It's impossible to say factually because if people came in the backs of lorries and then just disappeared. So, we didn't count them because we couldn't count them. And now you can count the people coming in. But I think regardless of that sort of statistical problem, there are more now, partly because it used to be less of a sort of organised effort. There are now some of the world's leading organised criminal gangs make their money out of illegal migration, and not just to this country, but basically from Africa and the Middle East into Europe. And these are big international cartels of criminals. So you need a big international anti-crime effort to stop them.
But it's always struck me as a little odd. I mean, you know how the mechanics of governments work. You know, we have two governments here, us and France. We've got two leaders. We've got two home secretaries, essentially, two lots of military, two lots of intelligence services. And between the two, all of that military and political might, we can't stop 26 blokes jumping in a boat and sailing across to the UK. That seems bizarre, doesn't it?
And that's what angers people. And the truth is, I mean, there are various things you need to do, but the one thing you absolutely need to do is control the beaches in France. If every time one of these boats appeared and people started wading into it, you punctured it, as we've seen the French do occasionally, then they'd stop coming across. That is the single biggest thing that could change. Effective law enforcement on and around the beaches of France. And I suspect most British people would say, look, if it takes bugging the French some more money to get them to be effective, then that would be worth it, because it would save us huge amounts of money, time and public discontent in this country. And I'm slightly puzzled as to why the French government hasn't done that, because I don't imagine the people living in and around the north coast of France actually like having these camps there.
Correct, and that's always been my contention on this, Damien. In that, you know, people go, oh, well, the French are quite happy for these people to sail across to the UK because it releases them from France, but they're not really, because all the while that attraction is there, that means those people are attracted to the northern parts of France, living in almost chaotic camps and goodness knows what. I mean, that terrain is pretty brutal and not pleasant, and living around it, I would imagine, is troubling.
No, absolutely. And the French have done it in the past. Sarkozy, when he was, I think it was when he was still Interior Minister, maybe when he was Prime Minister, but anyway, when he was the big figure in this, actually cleared the camps. And if you remember, in the day, they were talking about the jungle, because they all lived in woods. And he cut the trees down. It was, ruthless stuff, but it worked. And for a time, they didn't assemble. So if the French had the will to do it, they could do it. And, we have the problem now that, we think our government's in chaos. The French government is in complete chaos. They can't pass a budget. They haven't got a majority. They're getting through prime ministers at the rate of one every 5 minutes. So at this particular moment, it's difficult to expect strong action from a French government, but that, I think, would be the single biggest step forward we could take, because we've seen the sort of government's slightly ridiculous one in, one out policy. It appears to be one out, hundreds in, so that's not going to act as a deterrent. They scrapped the Conservative government's Rwanda policy, which may well have acted as a deterrent, and haven't replaced it with anything yet. But I think, I think Rwanda would have been an effective deterrent, but certainly a even more effective deterrent would be if you thought, it's very unlikely I'm going to get on a boat, because if the boats get stopped, and you have to stop them at the point of departure, because otherwise you are going to have dozens, possibly hundreds of dead people if you try and stop them in the channel. Trump, you quoted Trump saying, use the military. Well, the Royal Navy, what are they supposed to do? Fire at dinghies with 20 people in them? You can guarantee there would be children in every dinghy then. And we can't send the Royal Navy to kill children. That's just not, it's not the type of country we are. And also, I suspect the Royal Navy themselves would say we're not doing that. So, but you can solve it safely for the people involved if you stop them on the beaches.
And on that point, Damien, thank you. Damien Green, former Deputy Prime Minister, former Immigration Minister, with us on the programme. More comment from you coming in. This one reference, Lenny in Ashford says, I believe Damien Green's contribution to illegal immigration was not helpful when he gave the silent amnesty in 2011, which I also believe only encourage more to come. This one comes in, and I knew this was going to happen as well. When Lord Richard Dannett said it, I thought, right, and there's a reason I didn't challenge him on it. He said, I've just come in from the car to tweet exactly the same thing as somebody else has just tweeted. I can't believe, especially from a military man, that he described the Union and St George's flags on lampposts as xenophobic. Ian should have challenged him on that. 2 points here. One of the reasons I didn't challenge him is because we then end up having a debate about flags, and that wasn't the purpose. I know how these things work. If you go down that tangent, you can stop someone, but you absolutely... Here's what I think he was talking about here. The difference between legal immigration and illegal immigration and legit people and people who aren't legit, etc. Somebody described it to me, a shop owner in my neck of the woods says, how many flags do you put up where it goes from being a celebration to a message? And I thought, that's a good point, isn't it? If I'm living in a certain area and I'm not actually from that country, and suddenly flags aren't going up on lampposts outside the town hall or along the kind of high street where, you might put the Christmas decorations at Christmas, but the rest of the year you've got nice flags. They're not going up in the middle of a nice display on the big roundabout. They're just being stuck up everywhere. Bit of blue tack, super glue, lampposts, billboards, anywhere. Lob them up. At what point does that go from being, great, isn't it fabulous? Some patriotism finally being displayed, a celebration of Britishness, to the point where if you're the local doctor or the local road worker that comes from another country, at what point do you go, do you know what? I love the flag, but it's getting a little bit claustrophobic around here. And a friend of mine who absolutely bats from the right, and in fact, I'll go further, he's even put the flags up himself. He was the first person to, no pun, flag that point to me. Because he told the guys he was working with who were putting the flags up, you've got to do this properly. There's a way to put flags up. Painting roundabouts. What was the thing I saw recently that somebody painted, which was a bit silly? Painting, bus shelters and the like with a St George's flag starts to look like something. It becomes counter-intuitive to what you're trying to do. I think that's the point that Danet was making. And the reason I feel confident in saying that, number one, I vaguely know Lord Richard Danet from the time, huge amount of times I've interviewed him. Second two, he's a very proud, patriotic military man, head of the flipping army. And point number three, listen to what he was saying about channel migration. So I think he had a defence in his other answers, if that makes sense. But it might have, I'm aware when he said it, I thought it's a bit of a clunky way that it's going to come across. I am grateful to British Patriot Lee and others, Dave Fitzpatrick too. But I don't think he was saying the flag is, I think he was talking about if you have an overt display of badly placed flags, that might send out the wrong message. I'm not his lawyer. Who knows? Maybe he does hate the bloody flag, but I doubt it. David's in Gloucestershire. David, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Well, I will just pick you up very quickly on the flags.
Yeah.
I think the flags is a demonstration against this government stroke immigration. That's
it is.
That is my own personal.
But can you see how the flag could go from being isn't this great to isn't this a bit weird?
Well, maybe, but that's my fault.
I mean, put it this way: I've got a lamppost, telegraph pole rather, outside my house. I'd rather there wasn't a flag on it. Is that fair?
Well, that's up to you, but I've got my flag up, and that's what I'm doing it for.
Yeah, and do you know what? Yeah, I don't mind if somebody wants to put a flagpole next to, on the other side of the road, with a flag on it, that's fine. I just don't think super gluing one onto a telegraph pole is the right place for it. It's a bit disrespectful to the flag.
Yeah, but my real point was about this free speech. We are now turning ourselves, we have now become like the Stasi, or the police force are now like the Stasi in this country.
Go on.
Controlling free speech, complaining, about the way people are thinking, what people are saying, and I think it's an absolute disgrace. And as for Starmer to say he supports free speech, you think you absolute lying
do you think that, I mean, if you say to somebody, do you support free speech, doesn't everybody support free speech, ultimately, unless you are some kind of oddball with the brains and the mental capacity of a lobotomised chimpanzee? Doesn't everyone support it, David?
Well, yeah, but this idea where they're going round, I mean, they arrested Graham Linehan at the airport.
Yeah.
And so,
But all that stuff predates Starmer, doesn't it? I mean, that was happening under all those different Tory MP prime ministers. This isn't new. This is a decade old.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's got.
Well, you must do, because Starmer's only been there a year, and we've been talking about this stuff on this station for at least 7.
Well, I don't, like I said, I don't know, but I know it's getting worse. But visiting that lady, you know, to go round there.
It's horrible.
You know, to send the police, for the police to turn up there.
Yeah.
And then I think that Mark Rowley, isn't it, from the Metropolitan Police?
Yep, he's the commissioner.
Again, he's absolutely full of it. You know, BS, lying toad. I mean, to say.
Well, he speaks well of you, David.
Pardon?
He speaks well of you.
Well, that's as maybe, but to turn around and say I've got no choice but to send my officers out is the biggest load of rubbish you've ever heard. They choose to do that. I mean, they choose not to go after shoplifting. They choose not to go after knife crime or drugs, or you know why can't?
Funny enough, I don't know, and I'm not saying this as a defence of Mark Rowley, but I don't know how many of those the kind of cases we've seen recently as the woman that got the visit aren't from the Metropolitan Police. So I think that was Thames. Was it Thames Valley? Possibly.
Well, they said it was Thames Valley, but I've heard this week there's been 100 million. Is it 100 million a year in fare evasion? Now I don't know. I mean, wouldn't you think place a few officers at the end of a tube station? I'm sure they could target the right stations and say right.
Yeah, I watched one of those. I watched a Channel 5 thing the other day about people dodge their fares and use moody discount cards that are meant for kids, and yet they're adults doing it.
I'm sure if you went up and picked up some fare dodgers.
Yeah.
I expect they've all they'll be committing other crimes. They've probably got drugs on them. They've probably got knives on them. Not all, granted, but and it would be it'd be better use of your time than doing what they're doing.
I think so. Listen, look, I've got to move, David. You make a cracking point, though. Thank you very much indeed for that. That's David in Gloucestershire. A lot of passion there. Let's get a voice note on Sir Richard Dannett. This comes from Joanne in Norfolk.
Afternoon, Ian. Joanne from Norfolk. So I've listened to Richard Dannett, and there's a couple of things. First of all, we need to stop the pull factor. We also need to make the fact that any entry to this country illegally will preclude you from being made a citizen. At the moment, doesn't matter. They just wave them all through. Number one, stop picking them up in the channel. Number two, and the idea that these people who've got no money, are vulnerable, etc., made their way across Europe, apparently that's got digital ID, which is the one that's being thrown about as the wonder bullet, it's quite weird. How have they done that? They've made it to the coast and still got £2,000 or £3,000 to pay the illegal smugglers. All very strange. Smells like a bit of BS to me. Great show, thanks.
Cheers, Joanne. Love that. Nice collection of opinion there as well, which is always good. Thank you to Joanne in Norfolk. 0344 499 1000. 20 past 3. This is Talk.
But that summit in Alaska that Trump had with Putin looks not to achieve very much. Putin seems not to have been deflected an inch from his course. So Trump will be talking to Trump about whether he thinks there is actually any chance of Putin agreeing to a ceasefire and some sort of negotiation on a peace deal. And I guess Trump may be saying, well, what do you think about secondary tariffs on China and India? And I don't know, but you guys will find out in the media soon enough quite what position the British are going to take on that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
03444991000 is where you'll find us. Let's just move to this story then, and it never ceases to amaze us. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, but we know these stories pop up from time to time, and once in a while it's a bit of a kind of bullseye moment because it involves somebody reasonably high profile, if we can call Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey high profile. We sort of can. He's refused to say 10 times whether a woman cannot have a penis. During an interview with Piers Morgan, he said the vast majority of people identify with the same gender they had at birth, but there are a few who don't. Here's what he said.
For the record, do you believe women can have a penis?
For over 20 years, we've had a Gender Recognition Act which has said that people who want to change their gender can do so.
But do you believe that women can have a penis?
I've explained that I think the vast majority of people have the same gender.
Not people, women. Can women have a penis?
So what I'm saying is...
Well, can they?
03444991000 with your comments on that. And we are going to speak now with the Director of Advocacy and Sex Matters and author of Transgender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Helen Joyce is back with us. I mean, I don't imagine for one second, Helen, you were surprised to hear any of that. Davey's been there before. We know these people lurk among us, but it is sometimes rather... Well, if it wasn't so sinister and troubling, it would just be a bit fun to watch somebody come out with these kind of statements.
Absolutely. I mean, he doesn't believe what he's saying. He knows, like everybody else, that man and woman are biological categories, and we don't have to go into detail on the anatomy. You find out at around 2 or 3 what the differences between the two sexes are. You know it, and we can all tell what sex somebody is by looking at them fully clothed, by their voice, by their face, by the way that they stand, by the shape of their body generally. He knows that as well as everybody else does. The really sinister thing is that he feels he can't say it. Yeah. It's become taboo to just say, yes, I know that there are two sexes. Humans are mammals. We're the same as, cats and dogs and lions and bears and all the rest of them. Two sexes, can't change. Because he thinks he'll get attacked if he says it, and he's probably right too. He will get attacked.
What do you make of... his kind of caveat to all of this is that gender recognition certificates, whatever it is, been around for 20 years. Cross-party support, nobody really blinked. There was never a problem. Suddenly it's all kind of exploded. Once in a while somebody did live their lives as a female or as a male. Even that wasn't particularly remarkable. We all got on with things and nobody criticised anyone, and the subject of toilets never even entered the public conversation. What's your take on that?
I think it always was a problem, really, but the numbers were tiny, so people didn't realise. I think it's always been a problem for men to come into women's spaces, even if they have pieces of paper saying that they're women, even if they think of themselves as living as women, whatever the hell that's meant to mean, even if they've had an operation. You can't make a man into a woman by having an operation. It's ridiculous. We all know that. And because the numbers were very small and no one was talking about it, it didn't come to public attention. And yes, this piece of paper does exist, but what the Supreme Court said earlier this year is that piece of paper has very limited effect. It doesn't have effect when other people's rights are in play, in places like, single-sex spaces. For those spaces, the gender recognition certificate doesn't count, and Ed Davey has said he understands that. He said his party accepts that judgment. So he's contradicting himself as well as making, frankly, a bit of a fool of himself here.
It's kind of odd, isn't it? You sort of wonder... Is it just about the fact that, and I know it doesn't completely divide down political lines, but there is something in his kind of, that part of his left-wing brain, he can't go there. In the same way that some of these people won't they find it really hard to denounce an act of terrorism because they believe that by association they are therefore having a go at a brown person, for example. And similarly with this, if they dare to go down to that route, then they're going to be seen as not a nice person. I wonder whether that is, you know, at basic psychological level, what's going on here. Because in the absence of an explanation, he's just talking tosh, right?
I think there's two things going on. One is what you say, that it's been turned into a taboo. It's literally a taboo to just say, no, trans women are men. People find it extremely difficult to make that statement. They think it's hateful because they've been told it's hateful, whereas it's just a very simple statement of fact. But the second one is that he knows that this is politically toxic because it's been made very salient. Voters increasingly are aware of it. Voters very much think that biology matters and that single-sex spaces matter. And he's hoping if he can avoid talking about it, it will go away. Yeah. The problem is he is going to keep getting asked this stupid, horrible, ugly question until he gives a straight answer to it. And that answer is, no, women cannot have penises. And I did not really expect to have to say that on air.
Yeah. And where are we in terms of, I don't know, where does the UK sit in the league table of penis debates? Let's put it that way. I mean, does this that was straight off the top of my head. Does this discussion
we
happen?
We are top.
We must be near the top. I'd imagine America are probably second in there as well, maybe. Because I am interested culturally whether this kind of madness extends elsewhere, whether it is specific to certain demographics, certain classes. Well, have we got information on that? Because I'm pretty sure there's some places I could go to around the world and I wouldn't see anyone discussing this.
Yeah, so it's very much something that's in the Anglosphere, so the English-speaking countries. It came out of American West and East Coast campuses and spread from there. And so we're culturally close to those, linguistically, culturally, business and so on. It spreads by universities, it spreads by multinationals, by HR, by EDI, all that stuff. And it's been spreading a long time here. But we're the first in fighting back against it. That's why it's so politically salient. Other places still haven't got it onto the agenda. It's still a thing that ordinary people completely disagree with, but mostly it's not talked about on the media.
I mean, and the whole gender thing, there's more than one debate. There's some people who very quietly say, I would like to recognise myself as a woman. I'm not saying everybody else needs to, and I will live my life wearing a dress rather than anything else. That's fine if somebody wants to do that. Then there's another group of people who are sort of political agitators. We know the kind of thing. They're usually fairly fat, ugly white men. Is there any kind of reason for that? I mean, I don't see many Muslim men making these arguments. I don't see many black men making these arguments. I just see some, rather sort of odd bearded white blokes who seem to think they should be taken seriously as a woman, as serious as you and our producer, Alicia. Producer, loose word, but
there's obviously a bunch of different reasons that people identify as the opposite sex. Teenage girls do it because they don't want to think about, being women. They find the changing body embarrassing. Yeah. Why middle-aged men do it, I have to say I'm a bit suspicious on occasion, the wilder reaches of male imagination are something that we try to keep under control, frankly, and certainly keep out of women's spaces. And, why is it mostly white people? I mean, it's an identity politics thing, isn't it? To identify into an oppressed group because you haven't got anything else to do. Hang on, you've just answered it, Helen. Yes, you've just answered it. I think there's oppression points in them there hills, right? Yeah, well, yeah, I can't deny it. I personally also think male sexuality is a big driver. Male sexuality? Yeah. Males have cross-dressed. That's what we used to call them, erotic cross-dressers or transvestites. Yeah, I see. Yes. The kind of fetish element of this, and I think, and again. But if you raise that issue now, you're seen as not taking it seriously, and you're just, somehow maligning or condemning the poor man who just wants to wear a basque, a thong and a pair of stockings to work on the bus. Listen, we could talk about this for a lot longer, as ever. Helen, lovely to have you on. It's all common sense stuff, really, isn't it? Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy, Sex Matters. I think there is that group, that kind of student rebel group. It's the same when the word non-binary started getting you. Non-binary doesn't mean anything, we've got no meaning whatsoever. You won't find it in serious work on psychology, psychiatry, biology, etc. You won't find it because it's just something somebody invented. But it became a great way for sort of leftist students who couldn't find a way of standing out. They couldn't exactly say, oh, we're a minority. They had no minority status. They were just middle class,
fairly privileged white kids. They couldn't call themselves gay because they weren't gay. They couldn't call themselves black because they weren't black. They couldn't call themselves man if they were a woman. But non-binary seemed to work. It put them in a play, so you had non-binary kids talking to sort of black students going, yeah, I sympathise with your journey. No, you don't, you half-wit. I mean, you want the definition of offensive, it is that. Some bozo goes, I'm non-binary, up to, yeah, somebody who's non-white go, I sympathise with discrimination. You deserve to be kicked in the balls for that, mate. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
25 to 4. That is the time right here on Talk. In fact, it's not just the time here on Talk. I think it's the time pretty much everywhere else in this country right now. This from Alison, who says, don't be silly. Ed Davey is hoping for a certain class of vote. Now Labour have had to admit that a woman is an adult human female. You're right, actually, Alison. That is ultimately probably what he's thinking. Lots of material came from that Trump press conference yesterday, whether it was about immigration, whether it was about Ukraine, or whether it was about energy. Mr. Trump has urged Keir Starmer to boost North Sea oil and gas, calling wind power, quote, an expensive joke, while Starmer backed a mixed energy approach with ongoing fossil fuel use. Trump told the Prime Minister that the UK has some great assets. Here's what he said.
We don't do wind because wind is a disaster. It's a very expensive joke, frankly. And we got our energy prices way down. That brought the inflation way down, and now we have very little inflation. And we have a very, very strong economy. So that was very important. Drill, baby, drill. And you have a great asset here, and we spoke about it. It's called the North Sea. The North Sea oil is phenomenal. And I hope, because I love this country, you know, my mother was born in Scotland, and the Hebrides, Stornoway, that's serious Scotland. We were talking about it. And I want this country to do well. And you have great assets that you're going to start using, I believe, under this Prime Minister.
Scotland. That's where his mum was born. It was great to hear this stuff. And what I find is, we've got Ross Clark with us, columnist with The Sun. Afternoon to you, Ross. And the bit that I thought was fascinating, he said they spoke about this before they came out. So they'd had a meeting, couple of hours together, going through, you know, all the stuff, Ukraine and Russia and blah, blah. And they talked about this. I can't imagine how that conversation pans out. Does Starmer just sit there going, well, I hear what you say, Mr. President, but with respect, I disagree with you? Or does he go, I secretly agree with you, but I've got this bloke called Ed Miliband with a different agenda?
Yes, it would lovely to be a fly on the wall, wouldn't it? But,
yes.
I mean, just think. One of the other announcements, of course, was made yesterday. Was all this investment package for tech and AI, and we're going to have data centres everywhere and so on.
Yep.
Data centres are incredibly energy hungry, and at the same time as the government's trying to turn us into an AI superpower, it's trying to reconfigure our energy system based around the very intermittent renewables, wind and solar, without any real backup. And the thing doesn't really quite add up. And Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA, yesterday was one of those who's investing in, wants to invest in Britain. He made a point of saying, we're going to need gas power stations to power these, to provide the reliable electricity to power these AI supercomputers and so on. Without those, I mean, it's a non-goer. And well, at the moment, I said we have this policy, which is Ed Miliband's absolutely determined to decarbonise our electricity system by 2030. And, we're now talking, government's now suddenly talking about nuclear power to fund the AI data centres and so on. Well, think how long it's taken Hinkley C. That was supposed to be ready by 2017. We're all going to cook our Christmas turkeys on it by Christmas 2017, if you remember. It's still not open and still won't be open for another few years yet. There is absolutely zero chance of building any new nuclear power stations before 2030. Before
I mean, quite seriously then, what is going to happen? Because as you rightly say, I mean, these data centres, I mean, they require, it's an enormous amount of energy to get these things working, and water as well, for that matter. And of course, to make that stuff flow, that also requires a lot of energy. I mean, the whole thing is very, very energy based in terms of what it requires, more than anything else, as much energy as you can muster.
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, the only reason we've got away with this sort of decarbonisation programme so far is that we've lost so much of our heavy industry, all the steel works and big factories which used to consume vast amounts of power. In many cases, they've closed or gone to Southeast Asia in search of cheaper energy. But then along comes a new industry which is very energy hungry again. And it's just simply is not at the moment in the government's energy strategy. And we're trying to get by on intermittent forms of energy, saying, well, we'll import it from other countries when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. And it's simply not good enough. We're heading towards an energy crunch, and something has got to give. And I think in the end it will come down to common sense, and Starmer will take Ed Miliband into a side room and say, look, this cannot happen. We'll keep the gas power stations burning a little longer, if you don't mind. Ed Miliband has actually already quietly given way on that. He has announced that he's ordered the National Energy Systems Operator, which runs the national grid, to make sure there's 40 gigawatts of gas power on standby for the occasions when wind and solar's not delivering. I mean, that's as much as the average energy consumption in Britain. So things are already subtly changing, and the 100% decarbonisation promise by 2030, that's actually come down to a 95% decarbonisation promise. So the government actually is quietly giving way, but not far enough.
It's interesting because
a lot more.
I was about to say the other story as well, around looking at millions of households seeing energy bills rise by £100 in months. Many pointing the finger again to Ed Miliband's net zero policies. And of course, that's just the latest. There's been other figures as well that make that the number higher in terms of the cost of our energy, which is just, I mean, it's so ridiculous at the moment. It's almost a bad joke, Ross. There's almost not a month goes past when it doesn't go up.
Yeah, I mean, this is a figure that was produced by energy consultants Cornwall Insight, who reckon that the price cap, when it's announced for next April, it'll have to go up £100, partly to fund improvements to the national grid and partly to fund the new nuclear power station at Sizewell in Suffolk, which the government has decided it's going to fund itself rather than rely on outside investors who've lost confidence a bit in the one at Hinckley. But and the reason this is necessary, all this sort of spending is necessary, is at the moment we have a national grid that is based around relatively few large power stations that were based mostly in the Midlands, up in the north of Scotland, out in the North Sea. And the national grid as it is just simply can't cope with that. And we're paying billions to persuade owners of wind farms to turn their turbines off when it's too windy, because we haven't got the means to bring that electricity south. So the whole thing is just sort of adding layer and layer of costs.
Can you see Miliband being, well, to coin a phrase, let go by the boss? Because it does sort of, I think we've talked about this before, Ross, it just seems he's kind of almost, it's like in the anonymous department, isn't it? You know, every day we do stories about the Treasury and the Ministry of Defence and the NHS and all these other areas. Home Office, of course. This, although we talk a lot about net zero, the person behind it, he doesn't specifically come up very much in this. He seems, it's almost as if he's been given an entire wing of some cosy part of Whitehall and told he can do whatever he wants. You're on your own, Ed. We'll leave you to it, mate. You know stuff.
Well, it seems to be all the reports that I've read suggest that Keir Starmer did actually want to move Ed Miliband in the recent reshuffle caused by Angela Rayner's resignation. He wanted to make him housing minister instead, but apparently he just refused. So folded his arms, I'm not going anywhere. And Keir Starmer, who we're led to believe is this sort of ruthless operator within the Labour Party, said, oh, right, well, why don't you stay then? And so we're still lumbered with him, unfortunately, for the moment. But well, whether we'd still be lumbered with him in 2030 is another matter. Yeah, I've got a feeling a lot of people will be unlumbered by 2030. I'd like to think so. Ross, thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, columnist at The Sun. It's funny, isn't it? I had a horrific, not a realisation for the first time, but a compounding of a realisation, I suppose, when Nigel Farage and a few others have said, you know, Keir Starmer's not going to last the course. He's not going to last till 2029. That doesn't mean there's going to be a general election. Even, again, Mr Farage talked about 2027. Starmer won't be there after. Doesn't mean there's going to be a general election. It could mean they just change the leader. So why would Labour want to have a general election? Why would they want to do that? For what possible purpose would they have a general election? So we can get a little bit... You can get a bit enthusiastic, can't you? Go, well, maybe could be a general election. Wow, it's going to, maybe change a leader, maybe a whole change of cabinet, maybe a change of Labour-based direction, but not a change of government. And that kind of hit me as I was cleaning my teeth this morning as well. I'm surprised I didn't knock out a gnasher. That's not a euphemism, by the way, but you take the point. Let's go to Mike in Wiltshire. Mike, what have you got for us?
Hi, Ian. Back in the 70s, I worked out in the offshore oil industry in the North Sea. And the way the system worked there was that if we found an area that could be oil-bearing, that sea area would be sold off by the government into blocks, and the blocks would be sold to the highest bidder. Now, that gave them the right to extract the oil from that area and sell it on the spot market. Now, the most recent find is west of Shetland at Rosebank, and that particular area is 80% owned by the Norwegians, 20% owned by an Israeli company with some investment from an Italian company.
Okay.
For us to benefit from the drill, baby drill philosophy, we would have to make sure that any future oil finds were landed in the UK, and which would mean that they wouldn't be sold on the spot market, so there'd be a loss of income from that.
I did wonder, when he said that, I thought, well, we don't own all of this stuff anymore.
No, we don't, no.
Which means you can't, all very well, but it'd be like going around somebody else's house, wouldn't it, and raiding their cupboards.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, you've got the choice of either having lower energy costs in the UK or selling the oil on the spot market for immediate income.
Well, yeah, quite. So is there a way to make this work, do you think, to everybody's benefit, Mike?
I personally think we need a variety of different energy generation systems.
Agreed.
One of the things I mean, I don't really know much about it, but the Rolls-Royce small nuclear reactors seem like a good idea.
I think they're going to have to up their game on that. I don't mean Rolls-Royce. I mean the country's going to have to up their game.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean it takes far too long to build a traditional nuclear power station.
Yeah, decades potentially. So.
Most of them are owned by the French anyway.
I think they own all of ours, don't they?
Yeah. And interestingly enough, they generate most of their electricity through nuclear reactors.
Yeah, which is why, their bills are half what our bills are. But there we go.
Yeah.
Listen, good point. Mike, I've got to stop there for time. Thank you very much indeed. We'll talk to Scott in a second. That was Mike in Wiltshire. More coming up from you, 03444991000. Peter Cardwell's going to be on Drive this afternoon, but we'll talk to him beforehand and he'll tell us exactly what the heck is going on the big programme. Lots to debate, lots to discuss. 10 to 4 now. This is Talk.
A few weeks ago, he said that the reason the police were overreacting in this way to complaints about supposedly offensive social media posts is because their hands are tied. The law in this area is unclear.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to your calls. This will be Scott in Essex. Scott, how you doing?
Hello, all good. Up to my neck in paperwork. That's where I normally reside.
Paperwork, did you say?
Yep.
Yeah. Not the whole
Makes them
weekend, I
job.
hope. Not the whole weekend.
Oh, no, then I get a load of morning till night work.
Oh, dear.
I've got a busy weekend.
There you go. Well, enjoy it, whatever way you're tackling it, Scott. What do you want to say about the big issue here today about illegal immigration and the like?
Oh, it was one of the first discussions you had about our human right to freedom of speech, which don't seem to exist. Why can't we employ the human rights lawyers the boat people are using? Because they seem to be rather efficient at breaching the law.
Very good, aren't they? Yeah.
In this country.
Yeah.
Why don't we put them to employment of something useful, like defending our right to have a go at Keir Starmer for the complete mess up he's making of this country?
So we need the human rights lawyers. We kind of play them at their own game and get them to represent everybody else's human rights.
Oh, yeah, and how about we take all the human rights lawyers to the courts of human rights for violating the human rights of all the residents of Britain, visitors of Britain, and everyone
But then
else.
they would hire some more human rights lawyers, wouldn't they? And it would be a kind of sea of human rights lawyers everywhere.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a reduction on them at some point, but let's use them against themselves. Fight fire with fire.
I like it. Scott, have a great weekend. Don't work too hard. I know you said you're up against it. Thank you very much indeed. Tarquin down in London. Tarquin, we've not got long, but I'm sure you can do it. Afternoon to you.
Absolutely, Ian. Great show. Thank you very much. But right back up at the front end of the show, you had that poor lady on with the American lady being visited by the police.
Correct.
Unlawfully, in my view. I really do think in order to stop that sort of nonsense happening again, we need to eviscerate the entire police system, i.e. College of Policing, of Fabians, because they have this ulterior agenda of DEIing the world into complete submission, as Stephen Barrett would say. Law, it's a consent actually that we police supposedly by consent.
By consent. That's the basis of it, isn't it?
Yes, if Robert Peel could see how his police force has been twisted and distorted and mutated into his political Stasi, he would just say, don't bother, let's not bother. Let's police ourselves.
You would think so, wouldn't you? That would be... I think Robert Peel, it wouldn't be so much turning in his grave, it would be spinning. Like some kind of F1 test engine setup. Tarquin, I've got to move because Peter Cardwell's in the studio with us. Thank you very much indeed for that. Oh, by the way, Ronnie in Newcastle upon Tyne says, my grandma always used to say, never trust a man who is obviously going bald but stupidly still combs his hair in denial. An observation many may disagree with, but Ed Davey springs to mind.
Ooh,
it's a good point, isn't it?
Goodness me, but
no. Anyone can have a Willie. No, I mean they can't really. Only a man. No.
Although on the hair front, I mean, both of us have a good head of hair.
We've got a good head of hair. We're never going to lose it.
The hair and makeup women did say to me that you have the best hair and I have the second best hair in terms of strength, body, and shine.
Right.
So
they tell me the other way around.
Do they?
So,
Okay, keep you humble.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. Yeah, we're doing all right. Yeah, you get to a certain age where or a certain type of hair, you think, like, you're never going to lose your hair.
I hope not. No. There was a guy in school.
You might get some grey bits. They're no bother. But if you don't like them, you just cover them up. Or you might cover them up because you prefer your previous colour.
We actually had a guy in school with us who was 18 years old and he was losing his hair, and I would have had a lot of sympathy if he hadn't been, absolutely horrible.
Any guys under kind of 30, or certainly 25, who are losing their hair, some quite badly, I do sympathise with. I think later on you can cope with it.
Yeah, you can get on with it,
if you're 20, you're not meant to lose your hair at 20.
No, hair today, gone tomorrow.
Stop it. What is happening? Is your new book this funny, by the way?
Yes.
That's what I want to know.
Yes.
Which is out now, by the way. Remind me of the title, please.
It's called Political Animals. I'm actually speaking to Mark Dolan about it tomorrow morning at 9:45.
Are you really?
See what we did there? I'm coming in 15 minutes
we didn't
early.
even plan this, did we?
No,
it's not
we
like
didn't,
I said it
I'm very happy to talk about it, yeah.
But I think it's a genius title.
Thank you.
Did you come up with it?
I did come up with it, yeah.
Because it's literally about political animals and literally about political animals.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, that should be good, yeah.
Anyway, so you're on with Mark tomorrow morning.
Yes.
What is happening this afternoon, then?
Well, migration's such a huge issue, and we've had 5,500 in, 2 out, but actually there's so many questions about it. Ashley sent me a brilliant voice note yesterday, so much so that we've got it again. We're going to play it to Tony Smith, who's the former head of UK Border Force, and ask a few questions. Hold on a second. What about this flight that's coming tomorrow? What about these people who are going? Why couldn't we have sent the Indian guy back to India?